The first thing I noticed was not that the woman was bleeding. It was that she had taken off her shoes before walking into the sheriff's office. They sat side by side on the boardwalk, mud-caked and split at the seams, as if she had decided even ruined boots were too valuable to dirty a lawman's floor. Her stockings were torn. One heel was raw. She held a little carpetbag against her ribs with both arms, and when Sheriff Amos Hale asked where she planned to sleep that night, she looked at the floor long enough for the whole room to understand the answer. Nowhere. Amos cleared his throat. The stove ticked. Outside, somebody laughed in front of McBride's saloon, and a freight wagon rattled past with a loose iron hoop clanging against the bed. The woman finally whispered, "I was told you might know a safe place." Amos looked at me. I should have looked away. Instead, I heard myself say, "She's coming with me." The woman lifted her head. So did every man in that office. I had no idea then that those 4 words would cost me 37 head of cattle, a winter's worth of hay, 2 friends, nearly my left hand, and the only lie I had managed to live with for 11 years. Part 1, the woman on the boardwalk. I count when I am frightened. Not prayers, not blessings, things. Fence posts, buttons, nails in a barn door, steps from a bed to a window, the number of cartridges in a belt when somebody reaches too quickly under his coat. My mother used to say it was because I wanted the world to stay put long enough for me to measure it. My father said it was because I had the nerves of a rabbit and the pride of a mule. Both were dead by the time I was 26, so neither had to see how often they were right. There were 11 floorboards between me and the woman when I spoke up in Amos Hale's office. I remember that because I counted them twice. "Silas," Amos said quietly. That was all. Just my name, but he could put a warning into a man's name the way some preachers can put damnation into the word Amen. I leaned against the wall beside the gun rack and tried to look as if I had thought the matter through. I had not. I had ridden into Red Bluff to collect a coil of baling wire, lamp oil, and a sack of coffee. I had planned to be home before dark. I had not planned to carry anybody's trouble back to Juniper Creek Ranch. The woman stood near Amos's desk, barefoot, one hand pressing a handkerchief to a cut above her left eyebrow. She was perhaps 28, maybe 30. Hard years make guessing difficult. Her brown hair had been pinned once and had mostly surrendered. Dust lay pale along the shoulders of her dark traveling dress. One sleeve was torn at the cuff. She did not look delicate. She looked used up. "There is a difference. I don't need charity," she said. Her voice was low and steady enough to make the statement worse. "Good," I told her. "I don't have much to spare." Amos closed his eyes for half a second. The woman stared at me, uncertain whether I was mocking her. I was not. I have never been clever enough to mock people gracefully. "I've got a spare room," I continued. "My sister used it before she married. Door locks from the inside. You can help around the house if you want to earn your keep, or you can sleep for 3 days and decide later." "Silas," Amos said again. "You've already said that part." His mustache twitched. The woman tightened her grip on the carpetbag. "Why?" That question stopped me harder than a no would have. "Why?" Because she had taken off her shoes. Because she looked at every doorway before turning her back to it. Because when a drunk stumbled against the office window outside, she flinched but made no sound. Because 11 years earlier, my younger sister Rose had stood in a different room and asked me for help, and I had told her to wait until morning. I said none of that. "Because it's going to freeze tonight," I answered. She watched me for several breaths, then she looked at Amos. "Do you know him?" "Unfortunately," Amos said. I gave him a flat look. "Silas Mercer owns Juniper Creek 12 miles east. No wife. No hired hands living in the main house. His nearest neighbor is the Begay place about 3 miles south." Amos's tone softened. "And if he gives you his word, he'll break himself before he breaks it, which is occasionally a very stupid quality." The woman looked back at me. "My name is Alina Vale," she said. She said it too carefully. I noticed that. I noticed everything that afternoon and understood almost none of it. I bent to pick up her boots. She moved so quickly the carpetbag struck the edge of Amos's desk. "Don't." I straightened. Her face had gone white. "All right." She stared at my empty hands, embarrassed now. I can carry them. I expect you can. I nudged them toward her with the toe of my boot. She slipped her feet into them without lacing them. Amos came around the desk while she adjusted the bag on her shoulder. He took me by the arm and drew me toward the gun rack. A word. You've had several. Sela's. I counted 6 rifles on the rack. All right. His voice dropped. She came in on the noon stage from Prescott. Driver says she paid to Red Bluff but got down 3 miles west when she saw 2 men waiting near the station. Walked the rest. Those men follow. Not that I saw. You ask who they were? She says she doesn't know. We both looked at her. Elena had turned toward the front window. She was pretending not to listen. You believe her? I asked. I believe she believes she can't tell me. That was Amos all over. He had a way of splitting a hair and making you grateful for the knife. What else? Nothing she'd give me. You going to stop me? No. That surprised me. Amos let go of my arm. But I'm going to ask whether you've thought about what happens if whoever she's running from comes looking. I glanced at Elena again. No, I said. Good, I was afraid age had made you cautious. I'm 37. Exactly, ancient. He went back to his desk and opened a drawer. Miss Vale. She turned. He set a small revolver on the desk between them. Do you know how to use one? Her eyes went to the gun. Something passed over her face, not fear exactly, recognition. Yes. Amos looked at me once. That was the second thing I understood too late. He wrapped the revolver in a clean rag and handed it to her but first. She did not reach for it. I don't want one. Wanting rarely enters into it, Amos said. No. The word was firm enough that he did not argue. She picked up her carpet bag instead. We left the gun on his desk. Outside, the October wind came down out of the Mogollon high country sharp enough to make the cottonwoods shake silver. Red Bluff was never much of a town. A bank with bars on the windows. 2 saloons, 1 church, 1 livery, 3 stores, a blacksmith, Amos's office, and enough gossip to govern an empire. The boardwalk ran crooked because no 2 shopkeepers had agreed on height when they built it. Elena stopped beside my buckboard. There were 3 people pretending not to watch us. Mrs. Pike stood in the doorway of the mercantile, holding the same bolt of blue cloth she had been holding when we walked out. Old Nate Weller had paused halfway through sweeping the barber shop step. A boy I did not know leaned against the hitching rail with an apple frozen 2 inches from his mouth. I sighed. What? Elena asked. Nothing. You sighed. I do that around Red Bluff. She looked toward Mrs. Pike. They think I'm a criminal. Mrs. Pike thinks everyone is a criminal until she learns the exact kind. For the first time, Elena almost smiled. It vanished before it became a real thing, but I saw it. I remember that, too. On the drive east, she said very little. The road climbed out of town through dry grass and low juniper, then bent along a wash where last summer's flood had exposed red stone beneath the soil. My bay gelding, Jasper, pulled the buckboard with the offended patience of an animal who believed wagons were beneath him. Every few minutes, Elena glanced behind us. At the 3rd glance, I said, nobody's following. I know. At the 5th, I said, still nobody. I know. At the 7th, she stopped looking back. I immediately regretted mentioning it. The sun had begun to lower when she asked, how far? 5 miles. You said 12 from town. We've traveled 7. She looked at me. You count miles. Sometimes. You count everything. My hands tightened on the reins. Not everything. What don't you count? Mistakes. Too many. That got the almost smile again. A mile later, she said, you mentioned a sister. The smile in my mind disappeared. I said the room was hers. Is she nearby? No. She waited. I did not offer more, and she did not ask. That should have made the ride easier. It did not. Juniper Creek Ranch sat in a shallow valley where a spring ran even in dry years. My father had built the first cabin. I added the larger house after he died, though larger is a generous word for 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a front room with a stone fireplace that smoked whenever the wind came north. The barn leaned west. The corrals leaned east. Between them, they looked like 2 old men refusing to agree about where to fall. Eleanor stared at the house as we approached. "It's not much," I said. "It has a roof." I looked at her. She seemed to realize what she had admitted and turned away. A blue-shirted figure emerged from behind the barn, carrying a bucket. Daniel Begay was 17 that fall, narrow as a fence rail and twice as restless. His family ran sheep and a small cattle herd south of me. His father, Thomas, had helped mine survive a fever winter years before either of us were old enough to remember. Daniel came by most afternoons to trade labor for riding time on my sorrel mare, Pearl, which he adored more faithfully than most boys adore anything. He stopped when he saw Eleanor. His eyes moved from her face to me, then back to her. "Afternoon," he said. "Daniel," I climbed down. "This is Miss Vale. She's staying a while." Daniel's brows rose. I pointed at him. "Don't." I didn't say anything. "Your eyebrows did." Eleanor made a small sound that might have been a laugh, and disguised it as a cough. Daniel grinned. That was how she first entered my life. Cold, exhausted, lying about her name, and laughing despite herself at a Navajo boy's eyebrows. I wish I could tell you I understood then, that she was already deciding whether she could trust us. Mostly I was thinking about supper. I burned it. Not all of it, the beans survived. The biscuits could have been used defensively. Eleanor sat at my kitchen table with her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. She had washed the blood from her face. The cut above her brow was shallow, but bruising had begun near her temple. I set down a plate. She picked up one biscuit and tapped it against the table. It made a respectable knock. "I warned you," I said. "You did not." "I warned myself you were present." She looked down at the biscuit. Then she laughed. It was not a pretty, musical laugh from one of those serialized romances Rose used to read. It came out rough and startled, and ended with Eleanor pressing her fingers to her mouth, as if she had broken a rule. Daniel, who had stayed for supper without being invited in the way boys do when food is visible, looked delighted. "Mr. Mercer usually feeds those to the chickens," he said. "The chickens won't eat them. That is why they are angry. Go home, Daniel." He ate another biscuit. Eleanor's laughter faded, but something in her shoulders loosened. That small change affected me more than it should have. After Daniel left, I showed her Rose's room. The quilt on the bed was faded green. A cracked porcelain basin sat on the washstand. I had cleared most of Rose's things after she died, but one hairpin remained in the top drawer, caught in the corner where my fingers had missed it. I knew it was there. I had known for years. I did not remove it. Eleanor stood in the doorway. "Your sister isn't married," she said softly. There are people who hear silence as nothing. Eleanor heard it as an answer. "No," I said. "I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. That doesn't always make it smaller." I turned toward her. She looked immediately at the floor. The bruise along her temple seemed darker in lamplight. "Door locks," I said. "Window sticks in damp weather. If you need anything, my room's across the hall. I sleep light." Her eyes flicked to mine. I realized how that sounded. That wasn't meant to be threatening. "I know." "Good. You look horrified." "I am." Another almost smile. Then she closed the door. I heard the lock slide into place. That night I slept in the chair by the front window with my Winchester across my knees. Not because I distrusted her. Because when we had turned off the Red Bluff Road that afternoon, I had seen fresh hoofprints in the soft ground beside the wash. 2 horses. Shod recently. Coming from town. I counted them until moonrise. The next morning Eleanor was in the kitchen before me. She had found flour, bacon, and the good coffee I kept hidden behind a jar of dried beans because Daniel believed anything visible belonged to the public. She had braided her hair. The bruise on her face was yellow at the edges. My old blue apron was tied around her waist. "You don't have to work," I said. She was kneading biscuit dough. "I know. Then why are you?" "Because your biscuits are a crime." I sat down. Sheriff Hale should have arrested me. He may yet. She did not smile this time, but her voice had changed. Less guarded. Not safe exactly, just less prepared to bolt. We ate in quiet. Her biscuits were annoyingly good. At one point, she caught me counting the knots in the pine table. 17, she said. I looked up. What? The knots? There are 17 visible from your side, 19 from mine. I stared at her. She took a sip of coffee. I thought it might save you the trouble. I laughed then, a real one. It surprised both of us. For 6 days, nothing happened. That was almost worse. Alina stayed near the house at first. She washed her dress and wore one of Rose's old work skirts while it dried. She repaired a tear in my coat without asking. She swept the front room, found the loose hinge on a kitchen cabinet, and somehow convinced the stubborn stove to draw properly by cleaning soot from a vent I had ignored for 2 winters. She never entered a room without first glancing at the windows. She never sat with her back to a door. At night, her bedroom remained locked. On the second day, I heard her wake from a nightmare. No scream, just a sharp thump, then silence. I stood in the hallway outside her door with one hand raised to knock. I counted to 20. Then I went back to bed. In the morning, she had dark crescents under her eyes and said nothing. Neither did I. That restraint felt kind at the time. I have wondered since whether kindness and cowardice sometimes wear the same coat. On the 4th day, she asked to help with the cattle. You ever worked stock? I asked. No. Ride. A little. What does a little mean? I have fallen off fewer horses than I have stayed on. Daniel, standing nearby with Pearl's saddle over one shoulder, whispered, I like her. I heard that, I said. It was for you. We gave Alina my gentlest mare, Clover, and spent the morning moving 8 cows and their calves from the lower meadow before an early storm. She rode stiffly but listened well. When one calf broke toward the creek, she reacted before I could shout, turning Clover across its path without yanking the reins. The calf spun back toward the herd. That was good, I called. Alina's face lit up. Not dramatically, just enough. The expression struck me harder than beauty would have. It was the look of somebody discovering she could still do a thing right. By noon, clouds had rolled over the ridge. We ate bread and apples under a cottonwood while the cattle grazed nearby. Daniel lay on his back with his hat over his face. Alina sat with her knees drawn up, looking toward the mountains. Where are you from? I asked. Her fingers tightened around the apple. I regretted the question immediately. East, she said. That's a large place. Pennsylvania. You like it? I don't know. How can you not know whether you liked where you came from? She turned the apple in her hands. Sometimes the place and what happened in it become the same thing. Daniel lifted the edge of his hat. He was listening now. Alina noticed and looked away. I changed the subject. Storm will hit by dark. Daniel lowered his hat again. Alina whispered, thank you. I pretended not to hear. The storm hit earlier than expected. By 3, the wind had turned mean, driving dust through the grass in long gray sheets. We pushed the cattle toward the upper pasture. Thunder rolled over the ridge. Clover began to sidestep beneath Alina. Keep her nose into it, I shouted. A flash broke white across the sky. The mare reared. Alina slipped backward. For 1 second, I saw panic strip every expression from her face. Then something changed. She dropped low, grabbed mane instead of reins, and stayed on. Clover came down hard. Alina guided her in a tight circle, breathing visibly, until the mare settled. You all right? I called. She nodded, but she had gone pale. We reached the barn with rain beginning in cold, heavy drops. Daniel shut the doors while I unsaddled Clover. Alina stood beside the mare, both hands on the saddle horn. You can let go now, I said. She looked at her hands as if they belonged to someone else. Then she released them. Her palms were bleeding where her nails had cut skin. Lightning, I asked. She shook her head. The rearing. I waited. A horse fell on someone once, she said. Someone you knew. Her jaw trembled. My husband. That was the first true thing she told me about him. I knew it was true because she hated herself for saying it. He died. She looked at me. No. Rain hammered the barn roof. Daniel had gone still by the doors. Elena realized we were both watching her. I need to go inside. She walked out into the rain before either of us could stop her. Daniel came beside me. Her husband is looking for her, he said. Probably. Bad man. Probably. You going to ask her? I picked up Clover's saddle. No. Daniel frowned. Why? Because if she wanted me to know, she'd tell me. He considered this. My father says people hiding from wolves need help before they need questions. Your father is irritatingly wise. He says the same about you, except not the wise part. I threw a saddle blanket at him. That evening, Elena apologized for leaving the barn. I told her I had survived worse offenses. She looked at my left hand. What happened there? A white scar crossed my palm from thumb to wrist. Wire accident. That was a lie. The scar came from breaking a window the night Rose died. I had arrived too late to use the door. We were both liars by then. It made us strangely polite with one another. On the 7th morning, Daniel did not come. That was unusual enough that by 10, I saddled Jasper. Elena stood on the porch, holding a basket of laundry. Where are you going? Bégay's. Daniel usually shows before breakfast when he thinks I have pie. Do you have pie? No, that's never stopped him. She set the basket down. I'll come. No. The word came too quickly. Her face closed. I hated that I had caused it. I mean, if someone's been watching the ranch, I'd rather you stay inside. Someone has been watching. I cursed myself silently. She did not miss it. Sila's. It was strange hearing my name in her voice. Less warning than Amos used, more demand. I told her about the hoofprints from the first night. She went very still. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wasn't sure they meant anything. 2 men were waiting for me in Red Bluff. I know. You know. Amos told me. Her face changed from fear to anger so fast I nearly stepped back. You let me stay here knowing that. Yes. You brought danger to your home without even asking who I am. Seems so. Why would you do that? I had no answer I wanted to give her. So I said, I make poor decisions before supper. She stared at me. Then to my surprise, tears filled her eyes. She turned away sharply. That isn't funny. No. You could be killed. Yes. Daniel could be killed. That landed. My joking stopped. I looked toward the south ridge. Stay in the house, I said. Sila's. This time I'm not asking. She flinched as though I had raised a hand. I hated myself before the words finished echoing. Her mouth tightened. You don't get to order me. You're right. That surprised her. But if Daniel's in trouble because of something connected to you, I need to know before I ride blind into it. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she sank onto the porch step. The wind pulled a loose strand of hair across her face. My name isn't Elena Vale. I sat beside her, leaving 2 feet of space. She stared at the yard. It's Clara Whitmore. I waited. My husband is Gideon Whitmore. The name meant something even in Red Bluff. Whitmore Freight and Cattle had offices from Santa Fe to Phoenix. Gideon Whitmore's father had made money moving army supplies during the war, then doubled it selling beef to forts and mining camps. Gideon had inherited land, contracts, and the belief that anything within reach belonged to him. I had never met the man. I knew his kind. "How long were you married?" I asked. "9 years. And you're running because..." Clara rubbed her thumb over a worn seam in her skirt. "Because he hurt me." The words were almost inaudible. I did not ask how. She swallowed. At first it was never where people could see. Then it was. He apologized after. He always apologized. He would buy something or cry or tell me I had frightened him by threatening to leave. Her mouth twisted. Imagine that, I frightened him. I looked at the bruise near her temple. The horse. He pushed me from a carriage once. The horse reared when I fell. Gideon said the accident was my fault. After that I couldn't stand seeing one rear. My hands had begun to shake. I curled them into fists. Counting helps fear. It does less for rage. Why now? Her eyes went to the carpetbag visible through the open doorway. Because 3 weeks ago he hit our daughter. Everything in me stopped. You have a child. Had. The correction was too quick. Clara. She stood. I have to go. Where? Anywhere that isn't here. I stood too. Tell me what happened to your daughter. No. Is she alive? Clara pressed both hands to her face. A sound came through her fingers, not a sob, not yet. Something strangled before it could become one. I stepped toward her and stopped myself. Is she alive? She nodded. Relief came first. Then horror. Where is she? With my sister in Flagstaff, or she was. I sent her ahead with a teacher I trusted. Gideon found out after I left. Clara lowered her hands. The men at Red Bluff Station work for him. If they traced me, they may have traced Lily. How old? 7. 7. I counted the porch posts. 4. I counted the windows on the front of the house. 3. I counted my breaths until I could speak. Why come here instead of Flagstaff? To pull them away from her. I stared at her. She looked back at me, terrified and resolute. That was when I understood the shape of her plan. She had not been trying to escape. She had been trying to be followed. You used Red Bluff as a trail. Yes. You let those men see you get off the stage. Yes. You walked into the sheriff's office so there would be witnesses. Yes. And then I took you home. Her face broke. I didn't know you would do that. But once I did, you stayed. I thought if they believed I was hiding here, they would keep watching me instead of looking for Lily. I thought I could leave before anyone was hurt. My voice came out quieter than anger usually does. Daniel didn't come today. All the color drained from her face. No. I turned toward the barn. Sela's. I kept walking. Sela's, wait. Get inside, bolt the doors. There's a shotgun above the kitchen window. I told you I won't use a gun. I stopped. She stood in the yard, arms wrapped around herself. Then don't, I said, but know where it is. I saddled Jasper faster than I had in years. Before I mounted, Clara caught the stirrup leather. If Daniel is hurt because of me. He won't be. You don't know that? No. She looked up. I had lied reflexively and corrected myself. Something in her face softened with pain. Bring him back, she whispered. I nodded. Then I rode south. The Begay place lay beyond a low ridge where pinon and juniper crowded the slope. I saw smoke first. Not chimney smoke. Too dark. I pushed Jasper harder. The sheep pen was empty. One gate hung crooked. Near the house, Thomas Begay and his wife, Anna, were throwing buckets of water onto a burning stack of hay. Daniel was nowhere. I jumped down. Thomas. He turned. Blood ran from a cut along his cheek. 2 men, he said before I asked, came looking for the woman at your place. My stomach dropped. Where's Daniel? Thomas's eyes moved toward the east trail. He followed them. I swore. Anna did too, in Navajo, with enough force that I understood without translation. Thomas grabbed my arm. They said they would burn our winter hay if we did not tell them where she was. Daniel told them she went north with you yesterday. Good boy. Then he followed to see if they believed him. Stupid boy. Also good boy. We looked at each other. There are moments when fathers and men who have no children understand the same fear. How long, I asked. 40 minutes, maybe less. I mounted again. Thomas reached for his saddle. Stay, I told him. His face hardened. They burned your hay. Anna's alone, stay. He hated it. Then he nodded. I rode east. There were tracks on the trail, 2 adult horses, 1 lighter animal behind. Daniel rode a paint gelding when he was not stealing time on Pearl. The paint had a chipped left forehoof. I found its mark in the dust every 20 yards. I counted them. 1, 2, 3. At 26, the tracks left the trail. At 31, I found Daniel's hat. At 34, I heard a gunshot. The sound came from the wash below. I dismounted and tied Jasper in the trees. My Winchester felt too heavy in my hands. I moved downhill slowly. Voices drifted through the brush. A boy's lying. Then maybe he needs another lesson. I saw them through juniper branches. 2 men, 1 broad and blonde, wearing a gray coat too fine for the country. The other leaner, mustached, with a revolver loose in his hand. Daniel sat on the ground between them, 1 arm clutched against his chest. Blood darkened his sleeve. For a second, the world narrowed to the blood. I counted 3 drops falling from his elbow. Then I stopped counting. Let him go, I said. Both men turned. The mustached one raised his revolver. I already had the Winchester aimed at his chest. That would be a short conversation, I told him. The blond man lifted 1 hand. Mr. Mercer, I presume. You presume a lot for a man trespassing on my neighbor's land. We're looking for Mrs. Whitmore. Daniel's eyes met mine. He was pale but awake. Never heard of her. The blond man smiled. A leaner veil, then. She's not here. No, she's at your ranch. My stomach tightened. Then why are you here? Because we wanted to know what sort of man would interfere in Mr. Whitmore's private affairs. Disappointed. Confused. The mustached man kept his revolver pointed near Daniel. I shifted the Winchester slightly. Move that barrel away from the boy. He smiled. Or, I looked at the blond man. Your partner dies before he clears leather on me. You might get a shot. Daniel might get hit. I might too. Terrible odds all around. I shrugged. But I only need one of you alive to tell Whitmore to stay out of my valley. My mouth was dry. My knees felt weak. There were 14 cartridges in my rifle and 6 in the revolver on my hip. I knew because I had counted them twice before leaving the barn. The blond man's smile faded. You willing to die for a woman you met a week ago? No. That seemed to surprise him. I'm willing to shoot you for threatening a boy I've known 7 years. Different matter. Daniel made a small, pained sound that might have been laughter. The mustached man's eyes flicked down. That was enough. Drop it, I said. He hesitated. The blond man spoke first. Do it, Rusk. Rusk lowered the revolver and let it fall. Kick it away. He did. Now both of you ride west. Mr. Whitmore will come himself, the blond man said. Good, saves postage. His gaze sharpened. You think this is amusing? No, I make jokes when I'm frightened. That was true enough to unsettle him. You should be. They mounted. The blond man looked at Daniel. Tell your family we're sorry about the hay. Daniel spat blood into the dust. Tell Mr. Whitmore I hope his horse bites him. Rusk started toward him. I raised the Winchester. West, I said. They rode. I waited until hoofbeats faded before kneeling beside Daniel. Where are you hit? Arm. I cut the sleeve. The bullet had passed through the flesh above his elbow. Ugly, bleeding, but the bone seemed sound. I let out a breath. You are the stupidest human being I know. You brought a stranger home because it was cold. The second stupidest. His face tightened as I wrapped the wound. They know she's there. I heard. You have to go back. I'm taking you home first. Sila's. No. She might be alone. I froze. Because she was. I had left Clara alone. The calculation came fast and merciless. Take Daniel to his family, 30 minutes there, 40 back. Ride straight to Juniper Creek, perhaps 25 minutes. Daniel was bleeding but stable. Clara might already be in danger. I hated choices like that because they expose what a man values before he can arrange the answer to flatter himself. Daniel saw it on my face. Go, he said. No. I can ride. You can barely sit. Then tie me on. Your father will kill me. He already wants to sometimes. Daniel. He reached with his good hand and grabbed my coat. She came to your house because you said it was safe. The words went through me. Not because he meant them cruelly. Because he was right. 11 years earlier, Rose had come to my house because she thought it was safe too. She had stood on the same porch where Clara confessed her name and told me her husband, Caleb Dunn, was drunk again. She had a bruise beneath her sleeve. I saw it. I asked. She lied. I let her lie. Then she asked if she could stay. I told her yes, but in the morning, I said Caleb would sober up. I said tempers cooled. I said I would ride over at first light and talk sense into him. Rose went home. Caleb shot her before midnight. I killed him the next morning. Not in a fair fight. Not in self-defense. I found him drunk in his barn and shot him while his hands were empty. Amos knew. Nobody else did. That was the lie I had lived with for 11 years. I looked at Daniel. Can you ride? Yes. Don't lie to me. Then don't ask questions where you need a particular answer. That sounded exactly like his father. I helped him mount his paint and tied his reins short so the horse would follow mine. We go to my ranch first, I said, then yours. Daniel nodded, sweating. We rode hard. Halfway home I saw smoke. Again, my heart began pounding so violently I could hear it. Juniper Creek's barn stood against the sky, roof intact. The house, too. The smoke came from the north field. Dry grass burned in a widening line. Fire, Daniel shouted. We crested the last rise. Clara was in the field with a wet blanket, beating flames away from the fence. A man lay near the well. Another horse stood riderless by the corral. I drew my revolver as we reached the yard. Clara turned. Her face was streaked black with soot. Sila's. I jumped down. Who is he? One of them, not the two from town. He came from the north. He tried to get inside. The man by the well groaned. I approached with the gun aimed. He was young, maybe 22. Blood matted the hair above his ear. A broken shovel handle lay nearby. I looked at Clara. She held the other half. You did that. He wouldn't leave. You said you wouldn't use a gun. I didn't. Despite everything, I almost laughed. Then I saw her left hand. It was trembling badly. He knew Lily's name, she said. My humor vanished. Daniel swayed in the saddle behind me. Clara saw the blood on him. The broken shovel dropped from her hand. Oh, God. Through and through, I said, he'll live. Her face folded with guilt. Daniel tried to grin. I have been shot worse. No, you haven't, I said. She doesn't know that. Clara walked to him slowly, as if approaching a wounded animal. I'm sorry, she whispered. Daniel's grin disappeared. You didn't shoot me. They came because of me. They came because they're cowards. He looked at the fire. Also idiots, fires moving toward Mercer's best grass instead of the house. Thank you for the agricultural analysis, I said. We spent the next hour fighting flames. Thomas and Honor arrived before sunset, having seen the smoke. Thomas took one look at Daniel and said a long, quiet sentence in Navajo. Daniel winced. "What did he say?" I asked. "Nothing useful." Anna slapped the back of his head with terrifying gentleness. "That part I understood," I said. By dark, the fire was out. We had lost 6 acres of grass and 40 yards of fence. The young man Clara struck had disappeared during the confusion. His horse remained. In one saddlebag we found matches, dried meat, and a folded paper. The paper had one line written on it. "Bring Clara home. The girl is waiting." Clara read it once. Then again. Her knees gave way. I caught her before she hit the ground. For a second she fought me, pure reflex, hands against my chest. Then she understood who was holding her. Her fingers closed in my shirt. "He has Lily." I did not tell her we did not know that. Hope can become cruelty when used only to avoid fear. Thomas read the note over my shoulder. "Could be a lie," he said. Clara shook her head. "He knows her name." "That proves he knows her name," Thomas replied. "Not that he has her." She looked at him. "What if he does?" Thomas had no answer. Nobody did. That night our kitchen became a war room without anyone calling it that. Amos rode out after Daniel's younger sister fetched him from town. He examined the note, the tracks, and the abandoned horse. Daniel sat at the table while Anna cleaned and stitched his arm. He bit on a folded leather strap and refused to make a sound until she finished, then immediately complained that I had no pie. Clara sat by the stove, unmoving. At midnight, Amos said, "We need to send a telegram to Flagstaff." "Tonight," Clara said. "Office is closed." "Wake the operator." "I intend to." She stood. "I'll go with you." "No," I said. Her eyes snapped to me. I raised a hand. "That came out wrong. It came out exactly as you meant it." "Probably, but hear the rest. Those men want you on the road. We don't know where they are. Amos can send the wire faster alone." "Lily is my daughter." "I know." "No, you don't." The room went quiet. Her voice cracked. "You don't know what it is to sit here while someone else decides whether your child is alive." I did not. I looked down. "You're right." That angered her more than arguing would have. She pushed past me and went outside. I followed after a minute. The night was bitter and clear. Stars crowded the sky. Clara stood by the corral with her arms wrapped around her body. I stayed 10 feet away. "You can go," she said. "I know." "Then why don't you?" "Because it's my porch." She laughed once, sharp and miserable. "I hate you a little. Most people need longer." She covered her face. I stopped joking. "Clara, I left her." "You sent her somewhere safe." "I left her to save her." That's what cowards say when they survive something their children didn't ask for. I felt that sentence in old places. "Rose asked me for help," I said. Clara lowered her hands. I had never told the story aloud from beginning to end. Not to Thomas. Not even to Amos. But I told her enough. I told her Rose came to me bruised. I told her I sent her home for one more night because I did not want trouble with her husband. I told her Rose died before morning. I did not tell her what I did to Caleb. Not yet. Clara listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "That is why you took me in." "Partly. You saw her in me." At first. The words hurt her, I saw it. I corrected them. "Not now." She looked at me. "Now I see you." Her mouth trembled. "And what do you see?" I thought of her kneading dough before dawn, counting table knots, sitting rigid on clover and then turning a runaway calf, fighting a grass fire with a wet blanket, breaking a shovel over a man's head because she had promised herself she would not hold a gun again. "Someone very tired," I said. "Someone afraid, someone who keeps moving anyway." She looked toward the dark mountains. "That doesn't sound brave." Didn't say brave. Then what? Stubborn. She laughed through tears. I smiled. That's usually more useful. We stood in silence until hoofbeats approached from the west. Amos returned near 2 in the morning. He carried a telegram. Clara met him before he dismounted. Well, his face told us nothing. He handed her the paper. She unfolded it with shaking fingers. I watched her eyes move across the lines. Then she stopped breathing. What? I said. She gave me the telegram. It was from the Flagstaff Marshal. Margaret Vale residence found empty. Signs of forced entry. Neighbor reports woman and child removed by 2 men 3 days ago, whereabouts unknown. For a long moment, I heard only the wind. Clara sank onto the porch step. No tears came this time. That frightened me more. Amos removed his hat. Mrs. Whitmore. Don't call me that. Her voice was flat. He nodded. Clara, we still don't know who took them. She looked at the note in her hand. I do. I crouched in front of her. What will Gideon do? Her eyes lifted to mine. He'll make me come to him. Where? He has a ranch near Black Mesa, 40 miles north. He used to take me there when he wanted privacy. Something in the way she said privacy made my stomach turn. Then that's where we go, I said. Amos snapped no. I looked at him. You can't ride onto Whitmore land with a rifle and call it law, he said. Wasn't planning to call it law. That's exactly what worries me. Clara stood. I'm going. Amos shook his head. Not tonight. He has my daughter. Maybe. She stepped toward him. Sheriff, I asked you for help 7 days ago because I had nowhere to go. You gave me a place to stand long enough for me to remember I still had choices. Don't take them from me now. Amos looked at me, then at Thomas, then at Daniel, pale in the doorway with one arm bandaged. At dawn, he said, we ride to Red Bluff first. I wire the territorial marshal and request deputies. Nobody goes to Black Mesa alone. Clara opened her mouth. That is the help I'm offering, Amos said. You can accept it or you can ride out by yourself and make every bad man's job easier. She closed her eyes. At dawn, she whispered. We slept very little. I sat by the kitchen window again, rifle across my knees. Clara came in sometime before first light. She had changed into Rose's old riding skirt and a wool coat. Her carpet bag hung from one hand. You're leaving, I said. Not the way you think. She set the bag on the table and opened it. Inside were 2 dresses, a hairbrush, a small framed photograph, and a leather ledger. She handed me the photograph. A little girl stood beside Clara in a garden. Lily had her mother's eyes and a solemn mouth, but she was making 2 rabbit ears behind Clara's head with her fingers. I smiled despite myself. She does that every time someone takes a photograph, Clara said. The photographer in Philadelphia was furious. I like her already. Clara touched the edge of the picture. Then she lifted the ledger. This is why Gideon wants me back more than he wants his wife. I opened it. Pages of dates, payments, names, freight routes, cattle, numbers. I did not understand at first. Then I saw military supply contracts and quantities that did not match delivery notations. He was stealing. Stealing, bribing inspectors, selling the same cattle twice on paper, sometimes worse. Her voice lowered. 2 years ago, a wagon train disappeared near Apache Pass. Gideon told everyone raiders took it. They didn't. His men did. He collected the insurance and sold the supplies in Mexico. I looked up. How do you know? I kept his books. You? My father believed daughters should know figures even if husbands preferred decoration. Gideon learned quickly I was useful. He made me keep a second ledger for the things he couldn't put in his company books. I turned pages. Names repeated. Officials, contractors, ranchers. A judge. This could hang men. Yes. Including Gideon. Yes. I understood then. He doesn't just want you home, he wants this. Clara nodded. I stole it the night I left. You carried this across half the territory. I thought if I had proof, someone might believe me. Her eyes dropped. People always believed him. I closed the ledger. Amos will. Well, the judge, his name is in there. That was a problem. A large one. I looked toward the paling window. Then we need someone higher than the judge. And while we find one, Lily waits. I had no answer. Clara took the ledger back. If Gideon has her, he'll trade. The book for Lily. Yes. And then he kills you. She did not respond. You know he will. Maybe. Clara, if it brings Lily home. No. She looked at me sharply. You don't get to decide. I know. Then stop saying no as if you do. I stood. The chair legs scraped the floor. You want me to say it's noble? Fine, it's noble. You want me to say I understand? I don't. But if you walk in there planning to die, you may save Lily or you may hand Gideon the ledger and leave her with the same man you ran from. Clara's face went white. I hated the cruelty of the words. I did not take them back. You think I haven't thought of that? I think you're frightened enough to mistake sacrifice for a plan. She slapped me. Hard. My head turned. The room went silent. Her hand flew to her mouth. I'm sorry. I touched my cheek. Don't be, I was being an ass. You weren't. Still might have been right. She let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. Then she collapsed against the table, crying for the first time since the telegram. I did not touch her. Not until she reached for my sleeve. Then I put one hand over hers. That was all. At dawn, we rode for Red Bluff. Thomas came with us. Anna stayed with Daniel, who argued until she threatened to tie him to a bed. Clara rode Clover. Amos led. I carried the ledger inside my coat. We were 3 miles from town when we found the dead horse. It lay beside the road, reins tangled in brush. Amos raised a hand. We stopped. A man stepped out from behind a boulder 50 yards ahead. Then another appeared behind us. Then 2 more along the ridge. 4. I counted automatically. Clara whispered, Gideon. A 5th rider emerged from the trees. He wore a black hat and a charcoal coat, tall, clean-shaven, handsome in the careful, expensive way that makes photographs flattering and rooms colder. He rode a gray stallion and smiled when he saw Clara. Not with relief. With ownership. There you are, he said. Clara's horse trembled beneath her. I moved Jasper closer. Gideon Whitmore looked at me. You must be the cowboy. Rancher. My apologies. He sounded as if the distinction bored him. Amos spoke. Gideon Whitmore, I am Sheriff Hale. These men are under my protection. Stand aside. Gideon smiled. My wife is not one of your men. Clara found her voice. I am not your wife anymore. The law disagrees. The law doesn't sleep in my bedroom. His smile thinned. For the first time, I saw the man beneath the tailoring. Gideon reached into his coat slowly and removed a pink ribbon. Clara made a sound I will remember until I die. Lily's ribbon. Come home, Gideon said, and our daughter comes home too. Clara swayed in the saddle. I reached for her reins. She pulled them away. Is she alive? Of course. Let me see her. At Black Mesa. Bring her here. You know I don't negotiate in the road. Clara's breathing became shallow. I counted 4 men on the ridge now. No, 5. Another rifle barrel glinted behind a cedar. 6 plus Gideon. 7. Amos saw it too. Thomas's hand hovered near his rifle. Gideon looked at me. Mr. Mercer, this needn't concern you. Seems to already. I can compensate you. For what? Your inconvenience, damage to your property. The boy's medical expenses. Thomas's expression changed. Gideon noticed. $500, he said, more than fair. Thomas smiled without warmth. My son is not a broken fence. Gideon's gaze moved back to Clara. You see what you've caused. She flinched. His voice softened. People get hurt around you, Clara. They always have. Come home before anyone else suffers. I watched her shoulders bend. Not much. An inch, perhaps. But I recognized the motion. It was the body remembering an old cage. I leaned toward her. 19, I said. She looked at me. What? Knots on your side of my kitchen table. Gideon frowned. Clara stared. Then something changed in her face. She straightened. 17 on yours, she whispered. Exactly. A tiny piece of color returned to her cheeks. Gideon's voice hardened. Clara. She looked at him. Bring Lily to the sheriff's office in Red Bluff, she said. Then we talk. No. Then you have nothing I want. He stared at her. For the first time, he looked uncertain. It lasted less than a second. Then he smiled. You took something from me. Clara's hand moved toward her coat. I caught her wrist gently. Not now. Gideon saw. Ah, he said, so the rancher has it. I smiled. Has what? His eyes turned dead. You have until sunset tomorrow. Bring the ledger to Black Mesa. Clara comes with it. In return, the girl and Clara's sister walk away. Amos said, and if we bring territorial law instead? Gideon looked toward the ridge. One of his riflemen fired. The bullet struck the road 6 inches from Amos's horse. The animal reared. Clara screamed. Not from the shot. From the horse. Clover bolted. She lost one stirrup as the mare spun toward the wash. I kicked Jasper after her. Behind me, men shouted. Another shot cracked. Clover ran blind between rocks. Clara dropped low. She could not hear me or could not obey. The mare hit a patch of loose stone. Clara slid sideways. I drew alongside, reached across, and caught the back of her coat. For 2 terrible seconds, I had half her weight in my left hand, and both horses running. Pain tore through the old scar in my palm. Let me go, she shouted. Not a chance. You'll fall. Probably. I hauled. She kicked free of the lost stirrup and managed to throw herself back across Clover's saddle. We slowed near the wash. When I looked back, Gideon's men had not followed. He remained on the road beside Amos and Thomas, watching us. He touched 2 fingers to the brim of his hat. Then he turned his horse north. Sunset tomorrow. Black Mesa. Clara sat shaking on Clover. I realized my left hand was bleeding. The scar had split open. She stared at it. You hurt yourself. Old injury. Because of me. I looked at her. There it was again, Gideon's voice living inside her even when he was gone. People get hurt around you. I wrapped my handkerchief around my palm. No, I said, because I grabbed you badly. Silas. Clara, listen to me. Daniel chose to follow those men. I chose to bring you home. Thomas chose to ride today. Amos chose to wear that star years before either of us met him. You are not responsible for every choice made by people who care whether you live. Her eyes filled. Care? The word hung between us. I looked away first. You know what I mean. I'm not sure I do. Neither was I. That frightened me more than the riflemen. We rode back to the others. Amos had a crease along his hat where a second bullet had passed. I like this hat, he said. You have poor taste, I told him. And you have until tomorrow to think of a plan that doesn't get us all killed. Thomas looked north where Gideon had disappeared. He expects the ledger. Clara said he'll get it. I turned. No. She did not argue. That worried me. We reached Red Bluff before noon. The telegraph operator sent 3 wires. one to the territorial marshal in Prescott, one to the U.S. Marshal's office, and one to Flagstaff asking for any trace of Lily or Margaret. Then we waited. Waiting is a kind of violence when someone you love is in danger. You cannot strike it, cannot outrun it. You can only sit while the clock moves. By 4, no reply had come from Prescott. At 5, the Flagstaff wire arrived. A freight clerk remembered seeing 2 men board a northbound wagon with a woman and a little girl 3 days earlier. Destination, Black Mesa. Clara read the telegram. She folded it once, twice, then she looked at me. I am going tonight. Amos said no. She ignored him. Silas, give me the ledger. No. My daughter is there. I know. Then give it to me. I looked at Amos. He looked tired. Thomas stood by the window, jaw tight. Nobody had a better answer. And that was the worst part. Clara came closer. You said I still had choices. You do. Then let me make one. I felt the weight of the ledger inside my coat. I thought of Rose. I thought of Caleb's empty hands. I thought of how easily a man can mistake control for protection when fear gives him permission. Slowly, I took out the ledger. Clara held out her hands. I did not give it to her. Instead, I tore out 12 pages. She stared. What are you doing? Making your choice less useful to him. I handed the pages to Amos. Send copies east. Every newspaper, marshal, army quartermaster you trust. Names, dates, all of it. Amos understood immediately. Clara did too. If Gideon destroys the book, the evidence survives. Thomas nodded. I gave Clara the ledger. Her fingers closed around it. I'm coming with you, I said. No. Funny how much I dislike that word now. Silas, this is my fight. It stopped being only yours when they shot Daniel. Thomas stepped from the window. I come too. Amos swore. Then he reached for his coat. Apparently I am sheriff to idiots. Clara looked at the 3 of us. Her face crumpled for 1 second. Then she mastered it. If Lily is alive, she said, we bring her out first. No heroics, no revenge. The last word landed on me. She did not know why. I did. Agreed, I said. We rode north under a moon thin as a cut. Black Mesa rose dark against the stars. Somewhere beyond it waited a 7-year-old girl who made rabbit ears in photographs. Somewhere beyond it waited Gideon Whitmore. And inside my coat, beside the torn scar in my left palm, I carried the one thing Clara had not asked me to bring. The truth about what I had done 11 years before. I did not yet know which danger would reach us first. The moon disappeared before we reached Black Mesa. That should have made me feel safer. It did not. Darkness is useful when you are sneaking toward armed men. It is less useful when you are trying to remember whether the ravine ahead drops 10 feet or 50. I counted hoofbeats instead. 30 from the cottonwoods to the dry creek, 42 from the creek to the first sandstone shelf. Then I stopped because Thomas rode beside me and said, "You are doing it again." Doing what? Counting. You can't hear counting. Your mouth moves. I shuddered. Behind us, Clara rode Clover with the ledger wrapped in oilcloth beneath her coat. Amos brought up the rear. None of us had said much for the last 2 miles. The trail climbed through broken country toward a broad black shape that gave the mesa its name. Volcanic rock lay scattered over red earth like burned bones. Somewhere to the east a coyote called once, then stopped. Thomas raised his hand. We halted. Ahead on the ridge, a lantern moved. 1 man walking sentry. Then another light appeared farther left. 2. I found a third by watching for darkness moving against darkness. 3, I whispered. Amos leaned close, at least. That's not comforting. Wasn't meant to be. Clara guided Clover forward. There's another entrance from the north. We looked at her. The ranch house sits in a bowl below the south face, she said. Gideon had an old mining road cut behind it. Wagons used it before the bridge was built. Guarded, Amos asked. Probably is doing considerable work tonight, I said. Clara ignored me. There's a spring house on the north side. A narrow drainage channel runs from it toward the corrals. When Lily was small, she used to crawl through the dry upper section and come out behind the kitchen. My head turned. Lily has been here. Many times. You said Gideon took you here when he wanted privacy. He brought the family in summers before things became worse. The pause said enough. How narrow? Thomas asked. Clara looked at him. Too narrow for any of us. Then why mention it? Because Lily knows it. If we can reach the spring house, we might have a way to signal her. Amos rubbed his jaw. Signal how? Clara touched the pocket of her coat. She and I used to leave notes there. That was the first real plan we had possessed all night. It was a poor plan. Poor plans become precious when the alternatives are worse. We left the horses in a hollow behind a stand of pinon and went on foot. Clara knew the ground. That changed everything. She led us away from the obvious trail, across a slope where loose shale threatened to betray each step, then down into a narrow cut hidden by brush. Twice she stopped us before we crossed open ground. Once a rider passed so close above that I could hear the leather creak beneath his saddle. I watched Clara while we waited. She was afraid. Her hands trembled when she thought no one saw. Her breathing went shallow whenever a horse snorted nearby, yet she kept moving. People like to tell stories as if courage arrives cleanly, replacing fear. It does not. Most courage I have seen drags fear behind it like a broken leg. At the bottom of the cut, we found the old spring house. Its roof had partly collapsed. A stone channel ran from the back wall toward the ranch buildings below. The upper half was dry, exactly as Clara had said. She knelt by the opening and reached inside. Her fingers came back dusty. "What are you looking for?" I whispered. "A tin box." She reached farther. "Nothing." Then Thomas tapped her shoulder and pointed to a crack between two stones. A small piece of blue cloth had been wedged there. Clara froze. She pulled it free. The cloth was embroidered with a crooked yellow flower. "Lilies," she breathed. She pressed it against her lips. For several seconds, none of us spoke. Then she searched the stones with both hands. Behind one loose rock was a folded scrap of paper. The writing on it was large and uneven. "Mama, I am here. Aunt Maggie is sick. Mr. G says you come tomorrow. I did not cry where he could see." Clara made one soft sound and folded over herself. I caught her elbow. She did not pull away. Thomas looked toward the ranch. "Girl has courage." Clara stared at the note. She shouldn't have to. That was one of the truest things said that night. Amos crouched beside the channel. "Can we get something back through?" Clara nodded. She searched her pockets, found a pencil stub, and wrote on the back of Lily's note. "We are close. Stay quiet. If you can, go to the kitchen after the second morning bell. Use the channel. Do not wait for me if you can escape. I love you more than fear." She stopped before the last line. Her hand shook. Then she added, "Take Aunt Maggie only if she can walk. If she cannot, hide and wait." She read it once and nearly tore the paper in half. "I can't tell her to leave Margaret." Amos said quietly, "You aren't. You're telling a 7-year-old not to die trying to carry an adult. She'll think I abandoned her aunt. She'll think her mother trusted her to survive." Clara closed her eyes. That was the first heavy choice of the night, and it was made with a pencil so small she could barely hold it. She tucked the note into the crack and replaced the blue cloth differently, flower facing outward. "She'll know." We retreated to the rocks above the spring house. Black Mesa Ranch lay below us now. The main house was bigger than mine by enough to make comparison foolish. 2 stories, broad porch, whitewashed walls that looked gray in moonless dark. Lanterns burned in 4 windows. A bunkhouse stood to the west. Corrals and a stable to the east. Beyond them, a low stone building had 1 barred window. Clara pointed. Smokehouse. Bars, I asked. Gideon added them after a ranch hand stole from him. Could be holding your sister. Or Lily. Amos studied the grounds. We wait until first light. Men change watches when they're tired. Clara shook her head. Gideon expects me by sunset, not dawn. He won't expect us before then. He knows me, he'll expect me early. I looked at her. Because you rush. Because he knows I won't sleep while Lily is here. She sounded ashamed of being predictable. I said, that may be the first sensible thing he knows about you. She gave me an exhausted look. We waited anyway. Dawn took forever. Cold settled into my bones. Thomas sat completely still for almost an hour, which made me resent him. Amos chewed the same unlit cigar until it looked like wet rope. Clara kept Lily's scrap of cloth wrapped around 2 fingers. I counted windows. 4 lit, then 3, then 5 as kitchen lamps came on. At the first gray edge of morning, a bell rang near the bunkhouse. Men began moving. I counted 9, then 12, then 14. Too many. This is bad, I whispered. Your gift for analysis is unmatched, Amos said. A second bell rang. Clara stopped breathing. We watched the channel. Nothing. A minute passed. 2, 3. My palms began to sweat. Then a small face appeared behind brush at the far end of the drainage ditch. Clara's hand crushed my sleeve. Lily. I knew her from the photograph immediately. Her hair had been cut shorter. One cheek was smudged with dirt. She wore a man's coat over a nightdress and crawled on hands and knees through the dry channel. Alone, Clara made a movement toward her. I grabbed her arm. Wait, that's my daughter. I know. A ranch hand crossed the yard 30 yards behind Lily. She flattened herself beneath weeds. He passed. She crawled again. 10 yards. 5. Then she reached the broken spring house and disappeared inside. Clara ran. No one could have stopped her then. We followed. She reached the spring house, dropped to her knees, and pulled Lily from the opening. The child hit her so hard they both fell sideways. For one heartbeat, Lily made no sound. Then the sounds came all at once. Mama, 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 mama. Clara held her as if her arms had become the only walls left in the world. I turned away. Some griefs deserve privacy even when they are happy. Thomas watched the ridge. Amos watched the house. I watched nothing for a few seconds because my eyes had blurred. Then Lily's voice changed. Aunt Maggie couldn't come. Clara pulled back. Is she hurt? She's hot and she won't wake up right. Mr. G's man gave her medicine, but she throws it up. Where is she? Stone room. The smokehouse. Clara looked at Amos. He shook his head before she spoke. We have the child. We leave now, send Law back for your sister. She may die before Law comes. We don't know when the marshal will answer. Exactly. Clara stood. Lily clung to her skirt. Mama. Clara looked down. I watched the decision cut her in 2. Leave with her daughter and live. Stay for her sister and risk losing the child again. There are no good choices when someone cruel arranges the choices for you. Only costs. Clara knelt. Lily, you're going with Mr. Thomas. The child tightened her grip. No. Listen to me. No. Lily. You said don't wait for you if I could get out. I got out. Now you come too. Her voice was shaking, but her chin stayed up. Clara looked as if she had been struck. The child had used Clara's own instruction against her. Thomas crouched near them. Your aunt is still inside, he said gently. Lily nodded. Your mother wants to help her. Then I help. No, Clara and I said together. Lily glared at both of us. There was something of her mother in that look. Thomas almost smiled. You already helped, he said. You showed us where she is, now another job. Lily looked at him suspiciously. What job? Ride my horse south, keep him from doing foolish things. Horses don't do foolish things. You have not met mine. That got a tiny breath of laughter. Thomas held out his hand. I need someone brave enough to leave when staying feels braver. Lily looked at Clara. Clara was crying silently now. Go, she whispered. Lily threw her arms around her again. You come after. I will try. No, say you will. Clara closed her eyes. I understood the temptation to promise. Promises can be narcotics. They ease pain now and send the bill later. I will do everything I can, Clara said. Lily pulled back, unhappy with the answer. But she nodded. Thomas led her away toward the horses. I watched them until they disappeared into the cut. Then there were 3 of us. We need a distraction, Amos said. I looked at the corrals. I have an idea. He sighed. Why do your ideas always begin with that expression? What expression? The one that makes me regret knowing you. We waited until Thomas and Lily had enough distance to be safe. Then I crawled along the ridge toward the east corral. The ranch kept more than 40 horses, including remounts for Whitmore's freight riders. A rail fence ran around the largest pasture. The gate was chained. Chains are confident things. They assume people have time. I had bolt cutters. My father taught me never to ride anywhere without fencing tools. He meant for cattle emergencies. I chose to interpret broadly. I cut the chain. Then I opened 3 other gates. The horses looked at me. This is your chance to disappoint wealthy men, I whispered. They did not move. I picked up a rock and threw it against a metal trough. The clang exploded through the morning. 40 horses discovered freedom at once. They came through the gate like floodwater. Men shouted. A stable boy ran the wrong direction. Somebody fired a gun in the air, which improved nothing. I slapped one terrified gelding on the rump and followed the herd toward the main yard. Chaos is not a plan, but it can make room for one. Amos and Clara crossed from the spring house to the smokehouse, while every available ranch hand chased horses. I joined them behind the stone building. The barred door had a heavy padlock. Amos produced a small ring of picks. I stared at him. Sheriff, former deputy in Kansas. That explains nothing. Good. He worked the lock. Clara stood beside the door whispering, Margaret. No answer. The lock clicked. We entered. The room smelled of salt meat, damp stone, and sickness. Margaret Vale lay on a cot beneath the barred window. She was older than Clara by perhaps 5 years, with the same brown hair gone stringy from sweat. Her face was flushed bright with fever. Clara fell beside her. Maggie. Margaret stirred. Claire, I'm here. You took your time. Clara laughed through tears. You always were impossible. Family trait. I liked Margaret immediately. Amos touched her forehead. We need to move. Margaret opened her eyes wider. Gideon knows you're here. Every part of me went still. Clara leaned closer. What? He knew Lily would use the channel. He told them not to stop her. Outside, the shouting over the loose horses suddenly ceased. That silence was worse than gunfire. Amos looked at me. Trap, he said. The smokehouse door slammed shut. The padlock snapped closed from outside. Then Gideon's voice came through the barred window. Good morning, Clara. She stood slowly. I went to the window. Gideon stood 10 feet away, with 6 armed men behind him. You let Lily go, Clara said. Of course. Why? Because you would never believe I intended to honor a bargain until I gave you something. I hated the admiration in my mind. It was clever. Cruel men are not always fools. That would make them easier. Where is she now? Gideon asked. Clara said nothing. He smiled. With your Indian friend, I assume. Thomas was Navajo, not Apache, and I nearly corrected him out of habit. It seemed the wrong moment. Gideon looked at me. "Mr. Mercer, did you bring my ledger?" "No." Clara turned sharply. I had lied without warning her. Gideon studied my face. "I think you did." Then we're both disappointed. He sighed. "Search them after we bring them out." Amos gripped the bars. "You imprison a sheriff, Whitmore. This gets larger than your private quarrel." "Sheriff Hale, I have spent 10 years learning exactly how large a problem can become before important men notice. You are still well beneath that line." Amos's face went cold. Gideon walked away. Clara turned on me the moment he was out of sight. "You said you didn't bring it." I lied. "Why?" I thought honesty might be less useful just then. "Where is it?" I tapped my boot. Before riding from Red Bluff, I had removed the stitched inner lining and slid the ledger pages inside, leaving the empty leather cover under Clara's coat. She stared at me. "You gave me an empty book." "Mostly. Without telling me. You were determined to trade it." Her face hardened. "So you decided for me." There it was. The thing I had feared and still managed to do. Control wearing protection's coat. "Yes," I said. She expected an argument. I gave her none. "I was wrong." "That doesn't fix it." "No. You promised I had choices." "I know." Her eyes shone with anger. "Then stop stealing them when you dislike them." I had no defense. Margaret watched us from the cot. "Are you two married?" We both turned. "No," Clara said. "Good, you fight like people who still have hope." Despite the danger, Amos barked a laugh. Clara sat beside her sister and buried her face in her hands. I went to the door. "Silas," Amos said quietly. "I know." "Do you?" I looked at him. He nodded toward Clara. "You are very good at risking your own life. That does not make you good at deciding how others risk theirs." I said, "I know." "You say many things." I hated him then because he was right, and because there was no time to become better before we needed to escape. The smokehouse had one door, one barred window, and a roof of rough timber under packed earth. I counted 12 visible stones in the back wall that looked loose enough to work. 13 if you included the one behind Margaret's cot. We started there. The mortar was old. Amos used the heel of his knife. I used the broken metal edge of a meat hook. Clara helped until Margaret began coughing, then returned to her sister. Outside, men moved around the yard. Nobody entered. That worried me. "Why hasn't he searched us?" I asked. Clara looked up. "Because he wants me to ask." "Ask what?" "For him." I understood. Gideon did not merely want obedience. He wanted surrender that looked voluntary. Clara understood him because she had survived him. That knowledge seemed to disgust her. An hour passed. Margaret's fever worsened. We loosened one stone. Then another. The gap behind them opened into earth. "Could dig," Amos said. "With what?" He held up the meat hook. "Optimism." I knew law enforcement was underfunded. Clara gave me a look. "Jokes now. Especially now." "Why?" I scraped dirt from the opening. "Because if I stop, I start thinking." Her expression softened despite herself. "About what?" I looked at my left hand. The split scar had bled through the bandage again. Old mistakes. Before she could ask, footsteps approached. A key turned. The door opened. Gideon entered alone. Or appeared to. I could see shadows of 2 men outside. He carried a tray with water, bread, and a bottle of medicine. "For Margaret," he said. Clara stood between him and the cot. "What did you give her?" "Nothing harmful. She came here ill." Margaret muttered, "Liar." Gideon ignored her. He looked at Clara. "You seem well." She said nothing. His gaze moved over Rose's old coat, the dust on her skirt, the bruise fading near her temple. "You look poor." That sentence told me more about him than any threat. Clara's face did not change. "I have been poor before." "No, you haven't." I discovered I was richer than I thought. His eyes flicked toward me. There was jealousy there, but not the kind I expected. Not romantic. Possessive. He resented that she had found a life outside his measurements. "Where is the ledger?" he asked. "Gone. Clara. Copies are on their way to Prescott and Washington." That was not entirely true, but enough pages were traveling to make it dangerous. For the first time, Gideon's composure broke. His jaw tightened. "You stupid woman." Clara flinched. Then she stopped herself. I watched her consciously straighten. "There he is," she said. Gideon blinked. "Who?" "The man you are when no one is impressed." His face changed. He crossed the room in 2 strides and raised his hand. I moved between them. His palm struck my cheek instead. Pain flashed. I tasted blood. Gideon stared at me. I smiled. "That all?" His eyes hardened. "Don't," Amos warned from behind me. I knew he meant both of us. Gideon stepped back. "You think this makes you brave?" "No, mostly makes my face hurt." "You think she loves you?" Clara's breath caught. I did not look at her. This conversation took a strange turn. She doesn't know how to love anyone. She uses people until they bleed for her, then calls herself a victim. Ask what happened to her first child. Clara went completely still. The room changed. I felt it before I understood. "Gideon," she whispered. He smiled. "Didn't tell them." "Stop. Ask her, Cowboy. Ask why Lily isn't our first." I turned toward Clara. Her face had gone gray. Gideon enjoyed that look. That alone told me enough not to trust his version. "Get out," I said. "You don't want to know." "Not from you." His smile vanished. He looked at Clara one last time. "Noon, you tell me where the ledger is by noon, or Margaret goes without medicine, and your new friends start losing pieces." He glanced at my bandaged hand. "Perhaps beginning there." He left. The door locked. Silence remained. I did not ask. Clara stood facing the wall. Margaret spoke first. "Claire, you don't owe him the telling." Clara's shoulders shook. "I owe Sela's." "You owe nobody your wounds." "This one matters." She turned. I had a son. My chest tightened. His name was Benjamin. He was 4 when he died. I waited. Gideon had been drinking. We argued. Benjamin came into the room. Gideon grabbed me. I pulled away. A lamp fell. She swallowed. The curtains caught. Margaret closed her eyes. Clara continued because stopping seemed impossible now. "I got Lily out. She was a baby. I went back for Benjamin. Gideon dragged me away because the ceiling was coming down. Benjamin died upstairs." Her voice broke. For years, Gideon told me the fire was my fault, that if I hadn't defied him, if I hadn't pulled away, if I had been a better wife. She wiped her face angrily. Sometimes I know he's lying. Sometimes I wake up and believe every word. I understood too well how a lie can become structural, holding up a life even while poisoning it. "Did you drop the lamp?" I asked. "No." "Did you start the fire?" "No." "Did you leave Benjamin because you wanted to?" She shook her head. "Then Gideon has been using a dead child to keep you obedient." The cruelty of the sentence made Margaret flinch. Clara stared at me. "You say things like an axe." "I've been told." "It hurts." "I know." I sat against the wall. But sometimes wood needs splitting. For a while nobody spoke. Then Clara sat beside me. Not touching. Close enough that our sleeves nearly met. "What is your old mistake?" she asked. I knew which one. I looked at Amos. He lowered his eyes. He knew this was coming too. Rose's husband didn't live long after she died, I said. Clara waited. I told people he reached for a rifle. Her face changed. He didn't. No. The word felt like swallowing iron. I found him drunk in his barn. He said Rose had made him angry, said the gun went off, said he was sorry. My left hand curled. I shot him. He was unarmed. Margaret stared. Clara did not move. Amos found me afterward, I continued. He wrote the report as self-defense. Caleb had friends who would have sworn I threatened him. Rose was dead. Nobody cared enough to ask hard questions. Amos's jaw tightened. That was my sin, too. I looked at him. He had never called it that before. Clara stood. She walked to the far wall. I could not read her face. The silence became unbearable. Say something, I said. She turned. What do you want me to say? I don't know. That you were right, that he deserved it. No. That I understand. No. Then why tell me now? Because Gideon had made secrecy into a weapon. Because I had spent years thinking one violent act could repair the cowardice that came before it. Because if Clara trusted me with her daughter nearby, she deserved to know what kind of man stood beside her. Because you should know before we get out of here, I said, in case it changes what you want from me. Her eyes filled with something colder than tears. There. What? You did it again. I frowned. You decided there are only two choices, trust you or reject you, as if I cannot be angry with you and still need you, as if one truth settles everything. I stared. She came closer. What you did was wrong. I know. No, listen, it was wrong. Caleb might have deserved prison. He might have deserved hanging after trial. You killed him because you were hurting and wanted the hurt to go somewhere. My throat closed. Yes. And Amos helped hide it. Amos said yes. I hate that. Neither of us answered. Clara's voice shook. But you also opened your door to me. Both things can be true. That was harder to hear than forgiveness would have been. Forgiveness is neat. Truth rarely is. Outside, a bell rang once. Amos looked at the window. 10 o'clock. 2 hours until Gideon's threat. We returned to the wall. The hole was now wide enough to see packed soil. We dug with the meat hook, a spoon from Gideon's tray in our hands. At 10:30, Margaret became delirious. At 11, we heard shouting in the yard. At 11:15, a gunshot. Then another. I went to the barred window. Men were running toward the south gate. A rider had appeared on the ridge carrying a white cloth. Thomas. My stomach turned. He should have been miles away with Lily. What is he doing? Amos muttered. The ranch gate opened. Thomas rode in slowly, hands visible. A second rider followed. Daniel. I swore so loudly Margaret woke. Clara rushed to the window. Where is Lily? I did not know. Gideon walked into the yard to meet them. Thomas said something we could not hear. Gideon's head turned toward the smokehouse. Then he laughed. Daniel lifted his bandaged arm and made a rude gesture. That boy, I whispered. A man struck Daniel from the saddle. Thomas moved. 3 rifles leveled at him. He stopped. My vision narrowed. We get out now, I said. We attacked the wall like trapped animals. Soil gave way behind the stones. The opening widened one handful at a time. Amos got his shoulder through first. Then me. We were digging into a narrow gap between the smokehouse and a retaining wall, hidden from the yard. Clara helped Margaret crawl through. A shadow fell across us. I turned. A ranch hand stood at the end of the gap. For half a second, we stared at each other. He reached for his gun. Amos threw the meat hook. It hit the man's wrist. I crossed the distance and drove my shoulder into him. We went down in dirt. He was younger, stronger, and smelled of tobacco. He punched me in the mouth. I hit him twice. He reached for the revolver again. Clara stepped behind him and struck the back of his knee with a stone. He folded. Amos took the gun. "I thought you disliked weapons," I told her, breathless. "I dislike that man more." We moved along the retaining wall toward the stable. Margaret could barely walk. Clara and Amos supported her between them. In the yard, Gideon still faced Thomas and Daniel. I could hear now. "Where is my daughter?" Gideon demanded. Thomas answered, "Safe." "With whom?" "People who like her better than you." Daniel smiled through a split lip. Gideon's hand twitched. Thomas had come back to buy us time. I knew it. He knew we might still be locked inside. He had left Lily somewhere safe and deliberately ridden into danger because he believed we needed a distraction. Collective stupidity, I thought. Then I understood what it really was. No one person was carrying Clara's disaster anymore. We had divided the weight. That is what communities do when they are at their best. They make a burden smaller not by denying it, but by adding shoulders. We reached the stable. I found 2 saddled horses. "Take Margaret," I told Clara. "Ride north through the old road." "What about Thomas and Daniel?" "Amos and I get them." She looked at me. "You promised no revenge." "This isn't revenge." "How do I know?" That hurt because she had reason to ask. I took my revolver from its holster and held it out to Amos. "Because I'm not carrying this." Amos stared, then took it. I kept the ranch hand's unloaded rifle as a club and nothing else. Clara looked at my empty holster. "Come back," she said. "Not a command. Not a promise request. Just 2 words." "I'll do everything I can," I answered. She recognized her own sentence. Her mouth trembled. Then she helped Margaret mount and rode north. Amos and I went toward the yard. We never made it. Gideon saw us. There, gunfire cracked. We dove behind a water trough. Wood splintered inches from my head. "I hate your friends," Amos said. "He is not my friend. You attract trouble with remarkable consistency." 3 men moved toward us. Amos fired once over the trough. They scattered. Thomas used the moment. He grabbed Daniel by the coat and pulled him behind a wagon. Gideon shouted orders. Then another sound rolled over the ranch. Hoofbeats. Many. From the South Ridge came 8 riders. For one magnificent second, I thought the territorial marshal had arrived. Then I recognized the lead rider. Anna Bigay. Behind her rode 3 neighboring ranchers, 2 Navajo men from Thomas's extended family, Mrs. Pike's eldest son from Red Bluff, and the blacksmith, Curtis Bell, carrying a shotgun large enough to negotiate weather. I laughed. Amos looked. Good Lord. Anna rode through the open gate as if she owned it. Daniel. Her son looked up from behind the wagon. I am fine. You are dead when we get home. That seems contradictory. Even under gunfire, Daniel had priorities. The newcomers spread out. Whitmore's hired men hesitated. Most gunmen are brave when numbers agree with them. Numbers had changed. Gideon saw it too. This is private property, he shouted. Curtis Bell called back, so is my shotgun. That remains one of the worst legal arguments I have ever heard, and one of my favorites. No one fired for several seconds. Amos stood slowly with his badge visible. Gideon Whitmore, order your men to put down their weapons. Gideon laughed. On whose authority? A new voice answered from the gate. Mine will do. 2 more riders entered. The first wore a U.S. Marshal's badge. The second was the Red Bluff telegraph operator, Mr. Chu, looking deeply annoyed at being on a horse. The marshal introduced himself as Samuel Ordega. He held folded papers in one hand. Federal warrants, he said. Whitmore Freight is under investigation for fraud involving government contracts. Sheriff Hale's telegram arrived at a fortunate time. Gideon's face emptied. It was not victory yet. But the ground had shifted. His men knew it. One dropped his rifle. Then another. Gideon did not. He stepped backward toward the main house. "Clara," he shouted. No answer. He looked around wildly. "Where is she?" I stood behind the trough. "Gone." His eyes found me. There are hatreds that burn hot. His went cold. "You." He drew a small revolver from inside his coat. Ortega shouted. Amos raised his weapon. Gideon fired first. Not at me. At Daniel. Thomas moved between them. The bullet struck Thomas high in the chest. Everything happened at once. Daniel screamed. Anna fired. Amos fired. Ortega fired. Gideon spun and fell against the porch post. I did not see where the bullets hit him. I was running toward Thomas. He lay on his back in the dirt. Blood spread across his shirt. Daniel dropped beside him. "Dad, Dad, look at me." Thomas's eyes opened. He looked annoyed. "You came back," I said. His mouth moved. I leaned close. "Bad plan," he whispered. I laughed once and nearly choked on it. "Terrible." Anna knelt on his other side. Her face had become still in a way that terrified me. Marshal Ortega called for bandages. Someone brought a blanket. Thomas coughed blood. Daniel held his hand. "Don't," Daniel said. One word. A boy's whole childhood inside it. Thomas looked at him. "You listen to your mother." "No. First time for everything." Daniel began crying. Thomas turned his eyes toward Anna. They spoke in Navajo too quietly for me to understand. She bent and pressed her forehead to his. Then Thomas looked at me. "Pearl," he whispered. I blinked. "What?" "Boy thinks horse is his." Daniel made a broken laugh. I gripped Thomas's shoulder. "She is now." Thomas's eyes closed briefly. "Good." He was still breathing when we carried him into the house. Barely. Gideon was alive too. One bullet had struck his shoulder, another his thigh. He lay handcuffed on the porch while a deputy from Ortega's group bound the wounds. He kept asking for Clara. Nobody answered. At noon exactly, the same time Gideon had threatened to begin hurting us, Clara returned through the north gate. She rode alone. I met her halfway. "Margaret." With Lily and Thomas's cousins, they sent someone for a doctor. What happened? Then she saw blood on the ground. Her face changed. "Who?" "Thomas." She ran. Inside, Anna sat beside the bed. Daniel stood at the window, his bandaged arm hanging uselessly. Thomas's breathing had become shallow. Clara stopped at the foot of the bed. Guilt struck her visibly. I saw the words forming before she spoke. "Because of me." Anna looked up. "No," she said. Clara froze. Anna's English was quiet and precise. "Do not take his choice from him by calling it yours." The room went silent. Clara's mouth opened. Anna shook her head. "He came because he chose. I came because I chose. Daniel came because he is foolish." She looked at her son. "Very foolish." Daniel stared at the floor. "Your husband caused this," Anna continued. "Not you." Clara began to cry. Anna held out her hand. After a moment, Clara took it. "Thomas died before the doctor came." Quietly. No speech. No grand last words beyond the ones we had already heard. One breath came. Then another did not. Daniel counted the seconds afterward. I noticed because his lips moved. I hated that he had learned my habit in the worst possible hour. We buried Thomas 2 days later on a rise overlooking his pasture. The territorial marshal wanted Gideon moved immediately, but Ortega delayed 1 day after Amos argued the roads were unsafe following heavy rain. That was partly true. Mostly he knew Clara needed to see a grave before she saw a courtroom. At the funeral, people came from every direction. Navajo relatives, ranchers, Red Bluff shopkeepers, freight hands who had quit Whitmore, even Mrs. Pike, wearing black and carrying 3 pies because grief in her religion apparently required fruit. Clara stood beside Anna. Lily held Daniel's good hand. Margaret sat in a wagon wrapped in blankets, fever finally breaking. I stood farther back. I did not feel entitled to the family circle. Afterward, Daniel found me near the horses. His eyes were swollen. "You said Pearl is mine. Your father was dying. I might have been emotionally compromised." He stared at me. I sighed. "She's yours." He nodded. Then he punched me in the shoulder with his good hand. "Zhao, that's for letting me follow those men. I did not let you. Then it's for something else." He walked away. I almost called after him. I did not. Grief needs room to be unreasonable. That evening, Clara found me repairing fence near the burned north field. I was working one-handed because the scar in my palm had become infected. She watched for a minute. "You're doing that badly." "Thank you. Give me the pliers." "You know fencing?" "No." "Then why?" "Because you have one usable hand and an unhealthy relationship with stubbornness." I gave her the pliers. We worked until sunset. She learned quickly. At one point, the wire snapped loose and she jumped back, laughing. Not almost laughing. Laughing. Then she remembered Thomas. The laughter died. Guilt returned. I saw the moment. "You're allowed," I said. "Allowed what?" "That. To laugh." "Yes." "Who made you sheriff of laughing?" "Nobody. Amos already has the badge." She smiled faintly. Then her eyes moved to my hand. "Let me see." "It's fine." "That's a lie. We've established I'm capable." She took my wrist before I could move away. The skin around the old scar was red and swollen. "This needs a doctor." "It needs whiskey." "Inside you or on the wound?" "Both." She rolled her eyes. That ordinary gesture nearly undid me. For weeks I had known Clara only in crisis. Seeing irritation instead of terror felt like witnessing spring. She cleaned the wound at the kitchen table. Lily sat across from us, drawing a horse with 6 legs. "That's Pearl," she announced. Daniel, who was staying with us, while Anna handled funeral matters and relatives crowded their home, objected. "Pearl has 4 legs. She has 6 in my picture." "Then it isn't Pearl." "It says Pearl." She pointed to a backward P beneath the horse. Daniel looked at me for support. "I stay out of artistic disputes," I said. Clara dabbed whiskey onto my palm. I hissed. Lily looked up. "Cowboys are supposed to be tough." "Rancher," I said. "Mama says that's the same thing with bills." Clara's face turned innocent. I stared at her. For the first time since she entered Amos's office, the house sounded full. That frightened me too. You can become accustomed to loneliness until company feels like something borrowed. Borrowed things must be returned. 3 days after Thomas's funeral, U.S. Marshal Ortega came to Juniper Creek. He brought papers. "Gideon Whitmore is being transferred to Prescott tomorrow," he said. "Federal charges first, territorial charges likely after." Clara sat at the table with Margaret and Lily. "Will I have to testify?" "Yes." Her face tightened. "Against him." "Against him and several others named in the ledger." Margaret said, "Good." Clara did not look convinced. Ortega continued, "There is another matter." I disliked his tone immediately. "What?" He set a folded warrant on the table. My name was on it. Clara looked from the paper to me. Amos, standing behind Ortega, stared at the floor. I knew. 11 years late, but I knew. "Caleb Dunn," Ortega said. "A statement was received yesterday from a former ranch hand who worked the Dunn place. He says Mr. Dunn was unarmed when you shot him." My mouth went dry. Clara stood slowly. Who gave the statement? A man named Rusk. The mustached gunman. Of course, Gideon's men had begun trading information for leniency. Ortega looked at Amos. Sheriff Hale's original report conflicts with the witness. Amos said the witness is telling the truth. Margaret inhaled sharply. Lily stopped drawing. I looked at the child, then at Daniel in the doorway. He had heard everything. Silas, he said. I could not bear the expression on his face. Ortega produced handcuffs. I need you to come with me. Clara stepped between us. He just helped expose Whitmore. I know. He saved my daughter. I know. Then this is absurd. No, I said. She turned. What? I looked at the cuffs. It isn't absurd. Her eyes flashed, Silas. I killed Caleb. He killed Rose. Yes. He beat her. Yes. And now Gideon's man gets to use that to punish you. I looked at Ortega. Is Rusk getting leniency? His cooperation will be considered. Clara laughed bitterly. Wonderful. I stood. Clara. No. Listen. I am tired of people telling me to listen while men arrange the consequences. She was angry at more than the warrant. I understood. For years law had been a thing Gideon could afford. Now it was reaching for the man who helped her. Fairness looked crooked from where she stood. Maybe it was crooked, but I had spent 11 years letting one lie decide who I was allowed to become. I was tired. I did it, I said. Not Gideon, not Rusk, me. Her eyes filled. So you'll just go? Yes. What happens to the ranch? Daniel knows the cattle. Daniel is 17. He'll complain until someone helps. What happens to us? That stopped me. Us. The word sat in the kitchen with all its impossible meanings. Lily looked between us. Margaret quietly gathered the child's drawing papers. Daniel stared out the window. I looked at Clara. I don't know. Her jaw tightened. You always say that when the truth frightens you. Usually. She wiped her face. I hate that answer. I know. Ortega cleared his throat gently. I held out my wrists. The metal closed around them. I counted the clicks. 2 on the left. 3 on the right. Clara saw my mouth move. 5, she whispered. I looked at her. She was crying now. 5, I agreed. Lily ran to me before anyone could stop her. She wrapped both arms around my waist. The cuffs prevented me from hugging her properly. I bent as far as I could. You come back, she said. I almost promised. Instead, I said, I will do everything I can. She pulled away and scowled. Adults say that when they are afraid. Yes. I don't like it. Neither do I. She hugged me again. Daniel did not. He stood by the porch when Ortega put me on a horse. You lied, he said. Yes. My father trusted you. That one struck deep. I know. Did he know? No. Daniel looked away. Then maybe he wouldn't have. I had no right to disagree. We rode to Red Bluff. Clara watched from the porch until the ridge hid the house. I counted the seconds after she disappeared. I lost track at 114. The jail cell in Red Bluff had 32 iron bars. I knew by sunset. Amos resigned as sheriff the next morning. He placed his badge on the desk outside my cell and stared at it. Ortega didn't ask you to, I said. No. Then don't. He laughed without humor. You are in jail for murder and giving me advice on law enforcement. I've had time to reflect. 12 hours. Very productive. He sat on the chair across from the bars. I falsified a report. To protect me. That doesn't improve it. No. He rubbed his face. I thought Caleb deserved it. He did. Amos looked up. Don't make this easier. I'm not. Deserving punishment and being mine to punish are different things. Took me 11 years to learn it. He leaned back. You planning to plead guilty? Yes. Don't. Why? Because murder isn't the only possible charge. Because the territorial prosecutor may consider provocation, Caleb's violence, your state of mind. Because guilt is not the same as choosing the harshest sentence you can find. I stared at him. You rehearsed that? Most of the night. How many times? 31. I laughed. He did too. Then we stopped because it hurt. Clara came that afternoon. She stood outside the cell holding a basket. Mrs. Pike sent pie, she said. Which kind? Apple. I may confess to additional crimes. She did not smile. Amos left us alone. Clara sat on the chair. For a while we said nothing. Daniel won't speak to me, I said. He barely speaks to anyone. He speaks to Lily. Lily interrogates him until silence becomes impossible. I smiled faintly. Clara looked at the floor. Gideon asked to see me. My stomach tightened. Are you going? I don't know. I almost told her no. I felt the word rise. Then I swallowed it. She noticed. Thank you, she said. For what? Not deciding. That embarrassed me more than praise. What do you want? She thought. Part of me wants to look at him through bars. Understandable. Part of me is afraid he'll speak, and I'll become his wife again in my own head. I nodded, and part of me wants to ask about Benjamin. I looked at her. What could he tell you? Whether he remembers. Clara, I know it shouldn't matter. I wasn't going to say that. She looked up. It matters because it matters to you. That's enough. Her eyes filled. You're improving. Jail gives a man focus. A tiny smile appeared. Then she reached through the bars. I hesitated before taking her hand. Our fingers met awkwardly between iron. I am angry with you, she said. I know. About the ledger, about Caleb, about leaving me to answer Lily's questions. I know. Stop saying you know. All right. And I miss you. I stopped breathing. She looked frightened by her own admission. I could have made it easy. Could have said I loved her. Could have made promises across jail bars, because bars make emotion feel urgent. I did not. I miss breakfast, I said. Her face fell. Then I added your breakfast and your arguing and the way you steal the chair that doesn't wobble and Lily's six-legged horses and you, mostly you. She laughed and cried at once. That was terrible. I had a stronger beginning. No, you didn't. Probably not. She squeezed my hand. I counted the bars between us. One, just one where our hands touched. That was enough to make hope dangerous. The next morning, Clara went to see Gideon. I did not know until afterward. She came to the jail near noon looking pale but steady. I saw him, she said. I stood. How was it? Awful. Do you regret it? She thought. No. She sat. He tried everything. He apologized. He cried. He told me Lily needed her father. He said you were a murderer and I had traded one violent man for another. That landed exactly where Gideon intended. I gripped the bar. And for a minute I believed him. I looked away. Then I remembered something. What? You told me what you did before anyone forced you. Gideon has never confessed anything unless confession could buy him something. I met her eyes. That doesn't make me safe. No. Her answer came quickly. Oddly, it comforted me. I don't need you to be harmless, she said. I need you to be responsible for the harm you can do. I leaned my forehead against the iron. You say things like an axe too. I've been learning. She reached into her bag and took out a folded paper. Gideon also told me something useful. What? He said the missing ledger pages would never hold up because the original book was stolen property. That sounds like Gideon. Then he said the quartermaster in Prescott would never testify against him because the quartermaster had signed every false delivery receipt. I understood. He gave you another name. A name not written clearly in the ledger. I told Ortega. Good. They arrested the quartermaster an hour ago. I left. Gideon must be delighted. He threw a chair. I wish I had seen that. I did, it was satisfying. For the first time, Clara spoke of Gideon without shrinking around his name. Small victory. Real victory. Then she unfolded the paper. This is for you. It was a petition signed by 26 people asking the territorial prosecutor to consider the circumstances of Caleb Dunn's death and my voluntary surrender. Thomas's name was not there. It could never be. I stared at the blank place where I imagined it. Who started this? Daniel. I looked up. He won't speak to me. Apparently writing is different. My throat closed. At the bottom was Daniel's signature, crooked because he had written left-handed with his injured arm supported in a sling. Below it he had added one sentence. My father trusted Silas Mercer. I am still deciding if I do, but I think my father deserves to have his opinion counted. I read it twice, then a third time. Clara said nothing. I sat on the cot. For years I had thought punishment would arrive like a gunshot, sudden, clean, deserved. Instead it came mixed with mercy I had not earned, and anger I could not dismiss. That was harder. The prosecutor arrived from Prescott 4 days later. He offered a plea. Manslaughter, 5 years, with the possibility of release sooner for good conduct. Amos would face charges for falsifying the report, likely removal from office and a fine, possibly jail. I accepted. Clara hated it. 5 years, she said in the visiting room. Could have been 20. That does not make 5 small. No, Lily will be 12. That broke something in me. I looked down. Daniel will be 22, she continued. The ranch. May be gone. Stop sounding calm. I'm not calm. You look calm. I am counting the bricks behind you. She turned. How many? 86 visible. Her face crumpled. She came close to the bars. I don't want you to go. I don't want to go. Then fight it. For what? To prove I didn't do what I did. To stay. The word was raw. I reached through the bars. She pressed her forehead against my hand. Clara, don't make this noble. I'm not. Don't tell me it is right and therefore doesn't hurt. It hurts. Good. She was crying. I wanted to hurt you too. It does. Good. I understood. She had spent years being the only person hurt by Gideon's choices. She would not let me turn my choice into another burden she carried alone. I'm scared, I said. Her eyes lifted. It was difficult to say. More difficult than confessing the killing. Of prison. Some. Of what then? That you won't be here when I come back. The words made the room very quiet. Clara inhaled slowly. I don't know where I'll be in 5 years. I nodded. I know. I won't promise. I know. Stop saying that. I almost smiled. She touched my fingers. But I am here now. That was all she gave me. It was enough. The night before Ortega took me to Prescott, Daniel came to the jail. Alone. He stood outside the cell with his hat in both hands. Pearl through me, he said. Good. Keeps you humble. I landed in mud. Better. He glared. Then his eyes dropped. My father knew people do bad things. I waited. He still trusted some of them. Maybe he shouldn't have trusted me. Daniel looked up sharply. Do not tell me what my father should have done. There it was. His mother's lesson carried forward. I nodded. All right. He came closer to the bars. I am angry. You should be. I also don't want your cows to die because you are stupid. That's touching. So I will take care of the ranch until we decide. We. Me, Mama, Clara, Lily, maybe Margaret if she stops coughing on everything. I stared at him. Daniel, the ranch barely pays for itself. Then it is lucky I am cheap. My eyes burned. Your father would be proud. His face closed. I regretted it. Then he whispered, I hope so. We stood in silence. Finally he said, how many bars? 32. He counted them himself. 32, he agreed. At dawn, they put me on the prison wagon. Red Bluff gathered, as if for a parade no one wanted. Amos stood without his badge. Mrs. Pike brought food for the road. Curtis Bell shook my hand through the wagon bars and told me to punch anyone who insulted his horses, though I had never owned his horses. Margaret hugged me once. Daniel stood beside Pearl. Anna did not hug me. She placed Thomas's old pocket knife in my hand. Bring back, she said. Not the knife. Me. I understood. Lily came last. She handed me a folded drawing. I opened it. A house, a horse with 6 legs, 5 people standing in front. Clara, Lily, Daniel, me, and a figure she labeled Mama Anna. Above the house, she had drawn a crooked sun. Where is Aunt Margaret? I asked. Inside making biscuits. Good placement. You come back before I learn horses right. That gives me time. She frowned, then hugged my arm through the bars. Clara stood behind her. She wore the same dark dress she had worn when I first saw her in Amos's office. Repaired now. Clean. Her boots were laced. I noticed that. Of course I did. She stepped to the wagon. We looked at each other. No speech seemed right. She reached through the bars and placed something in my palm. Rose's hairpin. I stared. You found it. Top drawer. I knew it was there. I know. I closed my fingers around it. Why give it to me? Because you kept it like punishment. Maybe carry it as memory instead. I could not speak. The driver climbed onto the seat. Harness chains tightened. Clara put her hand around one iron bar. Silas. Yes. 17. For a moment, I did not understand. Then I did. Knots on my side of the kitchen table. 19, I answered. The wagon moved. She walked beside it for several steps. Then stopped. I watched her grow smaller behind us. I did not count the distance. For once, I let something leave without measuring how far. I thought that was the end of the worst part. I was wrong. Prison taught me there are numbers a man should never learn. The cell block at Yuma had 168 steps from the laundry yard to the mess hall if you took the inside route, 173 if a guard made you circle the cistern. There were 24 rivets in the iron plate on my cell door, 9 cracks in the wall beside my bunk, 312 mornings in the first year when I woke before the bell and needed several seconds to remember why the ceiling was not mine. I stopped counting days after that. Not because I became wise. Because Daniel sent me a calendar with every date crossed out in advance and wrote beneath it. Now you can find something useful to count. I kept it for 2 years. The first letter came from Clara 11 days after I arrived. I knew her handwriting before I saw the name. Silas, Lily has decided your bedroom is unsuitable because the window faces west and therefore lets the sad light in. I have not told her that light has no moral character. Daniel says this proves I know nothing about ranching. We lost 1 calf yesterday. I cried over it more than was reasonable. Anna did not tell me to stop. She made coffee and sat on the fence until I did. Gideon's preliminary hearing is next month. I am afraid. There, I wrote it plainly. I am afraid he will look at me, and I will forget every mile between his house and yours. I am afraid the lawyers will make Benjamin into a weapon. I am afraid I will speak badly, and men in coats will decide what happened to me based on whether I sound convincing. I am going anyway. Lily says the six-legged horse was anatomically innovative. Clara, I read the letter 12 times. Then I counted the words. 401. I wrote back on prison stationery that smelled faintly of dust and lie. Clara, tell Lily sad light is excellent for identifying cows with poor character. You do not owe the court a performance. Tell the truth badly if you must. It will still be the truth. I am afraid, too. Silas, I did not count those words. I knew there were too few. Prison did not make me noble. That needs saying. There were days I hated everyone outside simply because they could open doors. There were mornings when a guard's tone made me want to break his teeth. Once, in the laundry yard, another prisoner named Hollies called Rose a fool after hearing why I was there. I hit him before I knew I had moved. I broke his nose. He split my eyebrow. We both spent 2 days in isolation. The worst part was not the dark. It was realizing how quickly I had returned to the same answer. Hurt goes somewhere. That had always been my excuse. In isolation, there was nothing to count except breaths. So I counted those. When I reached 3,000, I stopped and asked myself a question I had avoided since Caleb's barn. What if anger was not a command? It sounds simple written down. It was not simple in the dark. A man can spend half his life calling an impulse his nature, because changing it would require admitting how many times he chose it. When I came out, Hollies was in the yard. He touched the bridge of his swollen nose. Your sister still sounds foolish, he said. My hands curled. I counted 4 buttons on his shirt. Then I walked away. He called me a coward. That hurt more than the fight would have. I kept walking. That was the first thing prison gave me that I wanted to keep. Not obedience. A space between anger and action. Clara's letters arrived irregularly. Sometimes twice in a week, sometimes nothing for a month. I learned not to turn silence into disaster. That was harder than fighting Hollies. The trial against Gideon began in spring. Clara wrote from Prescott. Silas, today Gideon's lawyer asked whether I had ever struck my husband. I said yes. He smiled as though I had handed him the whole case. Then he asked how many times. I said twice that I remember. Once with an open hand after he called Lily stupid, and once with a fireplace poker when he blocked the bedroom door after breaking my wrist. The lawyer stopped smiling. I almost did. That frightened me. I do not want to become someone who enjoys hurting him, even in words. Margaret says I am allowed a little enjoyment and has begun raiding the prosecutor's neckties. Today's was a crime against blue. Lily has learned to spell corruption because reporters keep using it. I wish you were here. I am also glad you are not here, because I think you would have punched the defense lawyer. Both things are true. Clara, I laughed so loudly in the cell block, a guard told me to shut up. Then I read the line again. Both things are true. Clara had become fond of that sentence. So had I. Gideon's trial lasted 6 weeks. He was convicted of conspiracy, fraud involving federal contracts, kidnapping Margaret and Lily, unlawful imprisonment, and several lesser charges. The assault allegations involving Clara were harder under the laws of the time. Marriage gave cruel men a wide field to hide inside. But the ledger opened doors to crimes no husband could claim as domestic privilege. He received 18 years in federal prison. Clara's next letter contained only 7 lines. He was sentenced today. I expected to feel free. Instead, I bought Lily a lemon candy and sat behind the courthouse until I could stop shaking. Margaret says freedom may be a thing the body learns after the mind. I think she is right. I am going home tomorrow. I did not know whether she meant Juniper Creek when she wrote home. I did not ask. That restraint cost me more than it should have. Months passed. Daniel wrote mostly about cattle and complained as if grievance were a literary form. Silas, the north fence is still terrible. I fixed the section you built, and it is now less terrible. We sold 14 steers at a good price. Clara argued with the buyer until he added 50 cents a hundredweight. I am considering letting her handle all sales because she is frightening when someone cheats on figures. Pearl bit Curtis Bell. He deserved it. Mama says I should tell you I am sleeping better. I'm not sure why this is your business, but there. Lily can ride alone now. This was not my idea. Daniel. Anna wrote rarely, but her letters were the ones I kept closest. Silas. Grief changes shape. Do not confuse a quiet day with forgetting. Daniel works too hard when he misses his father. I tell him this. He ignores me in 2 languages. Clara has rented the old Miller storefront in Red Bluff. She says women traveling alone need a place to sleep where no one asks what they did to deserve trouble. She is calling it Rose House. She asked me first. I said the dead do not need names as much as the living need doors. You will understand. Honest, I did. I sat on my bunk with that letter until evening count. Rose House. Clara had never met Rose. She knew only the room, the hairpin, and the mistake I carried. Yet she had taken the name away from punishment and made it shelter. I cried that night. Quietly. Not because prison discouraged tears. Prison contains more tears than most churches. Men simply become skilled at facing walls. I cried because some acts of mercy are difficult to survive. Rose House opened in July. It had 4 beds upstairs, a kitchen, 2 locks on every bedroom door, and a rule Clara wrote herself. No woman must explain her fear before she is given a meal. Mrs. Pike objected to the grammar and donated curtains. Amos, no longer sheriff, took work as a bookkeeper for the freight depot while his case moved through court. He pleaded guilty to falsifying an official report, paid a fine he could barely afford, and was barred from law enforcement for 5 years. He wrote me, I miss the badge less than I expected. I miss believing I was a good sheriff more. There is probably a lesson in that. I resent it. The new sheriff is 29 and oils his boots. I distrust him on principle. I read that one to Hollies. By then Hollies and I had reached the strange piece of men who have injured each other and grown bored of continuing. He was in for train robbery and had a wife in Tucson who no longer wrote. Your people are odd, he said. Yes, that woman waiting for you. I folded Clara's latest letter. She never said she was. She writes every week. Sometimes every 3. That's waiting. No, that's writing. He squinted at me. You always this difficult. I've been told. The truth was I had built whole futures out of Clara's commas, and then torn them down before sleep. In one future, I returned to Juniper Creek, and she stood on the porch. In another, she married someone patient and respectable before I came home. In another, she moved east with Lily. In another, the ranch failed, and there was no porch at all. I trusted none of those futures. Imagination is just fear wearing costumes when you cannot act. So I tried to stay where my feet were. The second year was harder than the first. The newness of punishment wore off. Routine became weight. Summer heat turned the cell block into an oven. Men fought over shade. Water tasted of iron. A fever moved through the prison in August and killed 6 men in 9 days. I caught it. For 4 days, I drifted in and out of consciousness. When I woke, Hollies was sitting on the floor outside my bunk with a wet cloth. You look terrible, he said. You always did have poor bedside manners. I stole the cloth from laundry. Appreciate the crime. I did. When Clara learned I had been sick, she arrived in Yuma 2 weeks later. I was called to the visitor's room without warning. She stood on the other side of a wooden partition with wire mesh between us. For a moment, I thought fever had returned. She looked different. Not dramatically. Her hair was shorter, pinned at the nape. She wore a plain tan dress and a dark jacket. There were lines at the corners of her eyes I did not remember. She looked stronger. She also looked exhausted. "You crossed the territory because I had a fever?" I asked. "You nearly died." "Exaggeration." The prison doctor wrote grave condition. Doctors enjoy adjectives. Her eyes filled. I stopped. "I'm sorry. You don't get to make jokes before I finish being angry." "All right." She gripped the edge of the partition. "I spent 2 years learning that when someone I care about is in danger, I cannot control the outcome by arriving sooner, thinking harder, giving up more, or blaming myself in advance. Then a telegram said you might die, and I forgot all of it in 6 seconds. I wanted to touch her. The wire mesh made that impossible. "I'm here," I said. Now. She breathed. "Lily wanted to come." I said no. "Good." She narrowed her eyes. I corrected myself. "Your choice, sensible choice, entirely yours." That almost made her smile. "She wrote you 3 letters. One is mostly a drawing of a snake eating Sheriff Bell's hat. Curtis isn't sheriff. Lily says authority is a state of mind. That child is dangerous." "Very." We looked at one another through mesh. "Rose's house is full," she said. "Not every night, but often. We helped a woman get to her brother in New Mexico last month. Another stayed only 2 nights. One returned to her husband." Her face tightened. I wanted to stop her. "Did you?" "No." I smiled. "You're improving. Do not use my own insults against me. I learned from an expert." She sat back. "I understand now why you hid the ledger." My smile disappeared. "That doesn't make it right." "No, it doesn't." She looked down. "Sometimes love makes control feel justified. That frightens me." The word love passed between us quietly. Neither of us pretended not to hear it. I said, "Clara, don't." I stopped. She looked up. "Not because I don't want to hear it, because I don't want prison to decide it for us." I understood. A confession in a visiting room could become another kind of bargain. "Wait for me. Promise me. Make my sentence mean something." She would not be tied by that. I was proud of her. I hated it a little. Both things were true. "All right," I said. She nodded. We spoke for an hour about ordinary things. Cattle prices. Lily's spelling. Daniel courting a young woman named Esther Tsosi, and denying it with such intensity that everyone assumed marriage was imminent. Margaret's cough finally gone. Honor expanding her sheep flock. The north fence eternally terrible. When the guard called time, Clara stood. "Sila's." "Yes." She put her hand against the wire. I placed mine opposite hers. Metal between skin. "I am going back to Red Bluff," she said. "I know. I may not be the same when you leave here." "I hope you aren't." That surprised her. "Why?" "Because 3 more years is too long to stand still for anybody." Her face crumpled. "You too," she said. "Don't stand still." Then she left. I did not count her steps. That was progress. Or exhaustion. Sometimes they look similar. The 3rd year brought rain to the desert and trouble to Red Bluff. A flash flood took out the East Bridge and half of Juniper Creek's lower fence. Daniel wrote 3 pages of profanity disguised as agricultural reporting. Clara wrote less. At first I told myself she was busy. Then I told myself not to tell myself anything. Weeks stretched. 2 months passed with only one short note. "Sila's. Rose's house needs a 2nd stove. Lily broke her wrist falling from Pearl and considers this proof that Daniel is an incompetent instructor. Daniel considers it proof that Lily is reckless. Both are correct. I am tired. Nothing is wrong. I simply have no graceful words. Clara, nothing is wrong." I read that sentence until it became ominous. Then I got angry at myself for making her exhaustion about me. That was new. Not pleasant. New. In November, Hollis received news his wife had remarried. He tore the letter in half, then into quarters, then smaller until white scraps covered the yard. "You going to tell me not to hit anyone?" he asked. "No." "Why not?" "You already know." He sat beside me on the wall. I was sure she'd wait. "Did she promise?" "No." "Then you were sure of something she never said." He glared. "I liked you better violent." "So did I sometimes." He laughed despite himself. A week later, I received Clara's longest letter. "Silas, there is something I have avoided telling you, because I did not want to hurt you while you had no way to walk away from the hurt. A man named Edwin Price has been helping at Rose's house. He is a widower. He owns the pharmacy. You met him once, though you may not remember. He is kind to Lily. He asked whether I would consider marrying him. I said no. Before you make this letter into a romance, keep reading. I did not say no because of you. I said no because I realized I do not want to marry anyone now, perhaps ever. The astonishing thing is that I am allowed not to know. Gideon trained me to believe every safe future had to be attached to a man powerful enough to defend it. Then you frightened me in a different way, because I began imagining safety attached to you. That was unfair to both of us. You are not a house, you are not a sheriff's office, you are not a locked door. You are a man I care for very deeply, who has frightened me, angered me, made me laugh, listened badly, learned slowly, and once produced a biscuit that could have killed livestock. I do not know what that will mean when you come home. I need it to be allowed to mean nothing for a while. I hope you understand." "Clara, I did not understand. Not at first. At first, I wanted to tear the letter in half. Not because of Edwin Price. Because Clara had dismantled the future I had secretly built, while congratulating myself for not asking her to wait. I had imagined the porch. I had imagined her there. I had imagined that suffering long enough would somehow earn me the life I wanted. That is a dangerous arithmetic. Pain does not buy people. Punishment does not earn love. I knew that when I was calm. I did not know it when I read her letter. I walked the yard until a guard ordered me inside. Hollis watched from his bunk. "Bad news." "No. You look like you swallowed nails." "She said no to marrying someone." "Then why are you upset?" I handed him the letter. He read slowly, then handed it back. "She has you by the throat." "Helpful." "No, I mean she told you the truth when a lie would keep you comfortable." I stared at him. He shrugged. "Prison gives a man focus." I threw my pillow at him. That night I counted the 9 cracks beside my bunk. Then I wrote Clara. "Clara, I did not understand when I first read your letter. I wanted you to have waited even though I never asked you to. That is not fair. I am ashamed of how quickly I made your choice a judgment of me. You do not owe me a shape for the future. I care for you too." There I wrote it plainly. "Silas, I nearly added love. I did not. Not because it was untrue. Because care was the word she had chosen, and I wanted at least once to stand inside the boundary someone else drew without pushing against it." Her reply arrived 3 weeks later. "Thank you." That was all. 2 words. I laughed for 5 minutes. Hollis thought I had finally lost my mind. Maybe I had. In the 4th year, my sentence was reviewed. Good conduct except for the fight in my 1st year. Work record strong. Petition from Red Bluff renewed. The territorial governor's office had received letters from people I did not know, including families helped through Rose's house who had somehow learned my story. I did not ask for that. Clara swore she did not organize it. I believed her. Mrs. Pike almost certainly did. The board recommended commutation to time served after 3 years and 8 months. I read the notice 4 times. Then I sat down. Hollis grinned. "Going home, Cowboy." "Rancher." Still irritating. Release was set for March 3. I told no one except Clara, because the prison required a destination contact. I half expected Red Bluff to appear at the gate anyway. Nobody did. On the morning of March 3, I received my old clothes, Thomas's pocket knife, Rose's hairpin, $31 in prison pay, and the revolver I had surrendered years before. I stared at the revolver, then pushed it back across the desk. "Keep it." The clerk shrugged. "Your property." "Not anymore." I walked out carrying one small bag. The sky was painfully wide. That was the first thing I noticed. Prison narrows the world until distance becomes almost rude. I stood outside the gate and did not know what to do with my hands. A wagon waited near the road. For one wild second, I thought Clara had come. Then Amos climbed down. He was heavier, more gray in his mustache, no badge. "You look terrible," he said. "Good to see you, too." He hugged me. That surprised us both. Then he punched my shoulder. "That's from Daniel. He already used that one." Interest. We rode north. I asked about everyone except Clara first, which fooled nobody. Daniel had married Esther the previous autumn. Anna had given them the south pasture to build a house. Margaret managed Rose House's accounts and had become terrifying to merchants who overcharged women she helped. Lily was 11, tall, argumentative, and still drew horses incorrectly on purpose. Juniper Creek had survived. Barely some years, better others. Clara bought half, Amos said. I turned. What? When taxes came due your second year. She used money from selling jewelry she'd taken when she left Gideon. Anger flared before reason. She shouldn't have done that. Amos looked at me. I stopped. Her choice, I muttered. Look at you learning. I dislike everyone today. Good, you're home. Home? The word made my chest hurt. She lives there, I asked. Sometimes. What does that mean? She keeps a room at Rose House for nights someone needs help. Juniper Creek the rest. In my house. Half her house now. I stared at him. He smiled. This is going to be enjoyable. Red Bluff had changed. Not much, which somehow made every change more visible. The boardwalk in front of the Mercantile had been rebuilt level. A second story had been added to the hotel. The old barber shop was now a bakery. The sheriff's office had a new sign. Across from it stood Rose House. Fresh white paint, green shutters, a small brass plaque beside the door. Rose House. Room meal quiet if wanted. I stood in the street staring. A woman I did not know came out carrying a baby. She nodded at me and kept walking. No ceremony. No monument. Just a door being used. That felt right. Mrs. Pike spotted me next. Within 15 minutes, half the town knew. Within 30, I had eaten 2 pieces of pie, shaken 20 hands, endured 4 awkward silences from men who did not know whether to welcome a convicted killer, and been told by the new sheriff that parking a wagon across the road was technically an obstruction. I liked him immediately because Amos disliked him. Where is Clara? I finally asked Mrs. Pike. She wiped flour from her hands. Ranch. Does she know I'm coming today? Mrs. Pike looked offended. She can read a calendar. That wasn't my question. Then ask a better one. I had forgotten how exhausting Red Bluff was. Amos refused to drive me the last 12 miles. Walk, I asked. Take the wagon. How will you get home? I am home. Then how do I return the wagon? Problem for tomorrow. He stepped down in front of Rose House. Coward, I said. Absolutely. I drove alone. The road east looked smaller than I remembered. Every bend held a memory. The wash where I saw the first hoofprints. The cottonwood where Clara ate an apple and told me places can become what happened in them. The ridge where smoke first warned me something was wrong. I expected memory to feel like being pulled backward. Instead, it felt layered, then and now occupying the same dirt. Juniper Creek appeared near sunset. The barn had a new roof. The corrals leaned less. Someone had painted the front door blue. I hated the color immediately. Then I saw Lily on the porch. She was taller than I expected. Of course she was. Children have the indecency to grow while adults are away. For 1 second she stared. Then she screamed Sela's. She ran down the steps. I barely climbed from the wagon before she hit me. 11 years old and all elbows. I hugged her. No bars. No cuffs. Nothing between us. I closed my eyes. You got tall, I said. You got old. Prison does that. Mama says vanity does too. Where is your mother? Lily stepped back. Suddenly she looked uncertain. Barnes. My heart began pounding. I counted the porch posts. 4. Still 4. She knows I'm here. She heard the wagon. And she's in the barn. Yes. That's ominous. Lily grinned. She said not to rescue her. I stared. Lily laughed and ran inside. I walked to the barn. Halfway there, I nearly turned around. Not from fear of rejection exactly. From fear of discovering that the life I had imagined was no longer mine to enter. Then I heard Clara's voice from inside. If you're counting steps, there are 23 from the porch. I stopped. 24, I called. You take longer strides now. I entered. She stood beside Clover's stall. For a moment, neither of us moved. She looked older. So did I. Her hair had threads of silver near one temple I had not seen in Yuma. She wore trousers under a long work coat, dust on her boots, and a pencil tucked behind one ear. She was beautiful, not because prison had preserved some image of her, because she had changed beyond it. Hello, she said. Hello. That was all. Nearly 4 years, and we began with hello. I laughed. She did too. Then both of us cried. It was undignified. I recommend it. Clara crossed the space first. She stopped an arm's length away. Can I? She asked. That question nearly broke me more than the embrace. Yes. She put her arms around me. I held her carefully at first. Then not carefully. She buried her face against my shoulder. I felt her shaking. You're here, she whispered. Now. She laughed into my coat. Now. We stood like that until Clover shoved my back with her nose, offended by the interruption to feeding. Clara stepped away and wiped her eyes. She still hates you. Good, something remained stable. We walked to the house. The kitchen table was still there. Same knots. 17 on my side. 19 on hers. I sat automatically in my old chair. It no longer wobbled. You fixed it, I said. Lily did. I don't believe you. Good, she used folded newspaper under one leg. I looked down. There it was. I laughed. Clara made coffee. We spoke carefully at first, like people crossing a frozen creek. She told me the ranch accounts. I told her prison work. She told me about Daniel's wedding. I told her Hollies had been released 6 months earlier and gone to Tucson to discover whether his former wife would let him meet his son. Then ordinary facts ran out. Silence came. Clara wrapped both hands around her cup. You want to ask? About what? Edwin Price. I looked at the coffee. A little. He moved to Tucson. Oh, that is all you're getting. Fair. She smiled. You want to ask something else? Do I? You are counting my buttons. I stopped at 6. All right. I breathed. What are we? They're inelegant, direct. Clara did not answer immediately. Today. 2 people drinking coffee. I nodded. It hurt. Not cruelly. Simply honestly. She reached across the table and touched my hand. Silas, I don't want to reward your return with a life you imagined while you were gone. I know. And I don't want to punish you by pretending I feel nothing. I turned my hand beneath hers. Both things true. Unfortunately. I smiled. Then coffee seemed safe. For today, that became our beginning. Not a kiss. Not a wedding. Coffee. I slept in the bunkhouse that first week. My choice. Clara offered my old room, but I found I could not sleep there. Too many versions of myself occupied it. The bunkhouse had mice and a roof leak. It felt honest. I returned to ranch work slowly. My left hand had lost some strength after the infection. Wire work made it ache. Daniel, now 21 and somehow broader without appearing older, criticized everything I did. You tie that wrong now. I taught you that not. You taught me wrong. Your father never complained. Daniel's face changed. The grief was still there. Quieter. Not gone. He complained about you constantly, Daniel said. I laughed. Then he did too. That was the first time we spoke of Thomas, without one of us going silent afterward. A week later, Anna came for supper. She looked exactly the same until she smiled, and then I saw the years. I returned Thomas's pocket knife. She pushed it back. He gave to you by way of me. Keep. I thought you meant bring it back. I meant you. I swallowed. I did. Yes. She studied me. Different. Worse. Different. That was all. I accepted it. Rose's house needed repairs every Saturday. Apparently because 4 years of Clara managing it had taught everyone in Red Bluff that I worked for free. I fixed a window sash, replaced a stair tread, and built a second shelf in the pantry. Women came and went. Some spoke to me. Some avoided me. Clara never introduced me as the man who founded anything, because I had not. I was simply Silas, who knew carpentry poorly but cheaply. One afternoon, a young woman arrived with a swollen lip and no shoes. I was repairing the front step. She stopped when she saw me. Every part of her body prepared to flee. I recognized it. Years earlier, I would have spoken immediately, told her she was safe, told her what to do, offered solutions fast enough to prove I was useful. Instead, I set down the hammer and moved away from the door. Clara came out. The young woman whispered something. Clara opened the door wider. No questions. The woman entered. Her shoes remained outside on the boardwalk. I stared at them. Clara noticed. Our eyes met. Neither of us said anything. That night I could not sleep. Rose returned to me in dreams more often after prison, not less. Sometimes she lived. Sometimes she stood at my door and I opened it. Sometimes Caleb was there and I shot him again. In the worst dream, Rose asked why saving Clara had not saved her. I woke before dawn and walked to the creek. Clara found me there. She sat on a rock without asking what was wrong. We watched the water move around stones. The woman at Rose's house reminded you, she said eventually. Yes. Of me. Of both of you. She nodded. Do you still think taking me home was about Rose? I considered. The first 4 words were, she's coming with me. Yes. And after, I looked at the water. After I kept expecting helping you to repair something. Did it? No. The answer surprised her. Rose is still dead. Caleb is still dead. Thomas is still dead. I still did what I did. Nothing was repaired. Then what changed? I did maybe some. Clara leaned her shoulder against mine. That may be the only repair people get. We sat until sunrise. Weeks became months. Clara and I learned each other outside emergency. It was less romantic than surviving gunmen and more difficult in certain ways. She hated when I left wet towels on the washstand. I hated that she reorganized tools by size instead of purpose. She liked sleeping with windows cracked even in cold weather because locked, airless rooms made her uneasy. I needed doors fully shut, or I woke at every creak. She could negotiate cattle prices like a banker, but forgot where she put her spectacles twice a day. I knew where everything was, but could not remember birthdays without writing them on the barn wall. We argued. Not beautifully. Once she accused me of using silence as punishment. I accused her of treating every disagreement like an approaching storm. Both accusations were partly true. We did not speak for 6 hours. Then Lily came home, looked between us, and said, "This is exhausting," before making sandwiches for everyone. Clara laughed first. I followed. We apologized badly and specifically. That became another habit worth keeping. In June, a letter arrived from federal prison. Gideon Whitmore had asked Clara to visit. She burned the letter in the stove, then spent the afternoon vomiting. I found her sitting on the kitchen floor after dark. I did not ask why she had not called me. I sat beside her. "I thought I was done being afraid of him," she whispered. "Maybe done isn't a real thing." "That's depressing. I have other qualities." She leaned her head against the cabinet. "Part of me wanted to go." "Why?" "To prove I could." "And part wanted him to die before he could ask anything of me again." I knew that part too well. "You going?" "No." I nodded. She looked at me. "You don't think I should confront him?" There had been a time I would have answered immediately. Now I said, "I think you know why you're choosing no. That's enough." She studied me for a long moment. Then she took my hand. "Prison improved you in one or two irritating ways. Very expensive schooling." In August, Gideon died. Not dramatically. No murder, no escape, no last curse. Pneumonia. A clerk's letter arrived because Clara was still legally listed as next of kin in some records. She read it at the kitchen table, then folded it. "Well," I asked. She looked at me. "I don't know." I waited. I thought there would be relief. There might be later. I thought I might be glad. "You might be." I thought I would feel guilty if I was glad. "You might do that too." She gave me a watery smile. "Helpful. I try." Lily came in from the porch. She saw the letter. "Is he dead?" Clara nodded. Lily stood very still. She was old enough to remember Gideon clearly now, but young enough that memory and imagination still tangled. "Can he come back?" The question broke my heart. Clara got up and knelt in front of her. "No. Ever. No." Lily's shoulders dropped. "Not grief. Relief." Then she began crying because relief about a father's death is a cruel thing for a child to understand. Clara held her. I went outside. Not because I did not belong. Because that moment belonged first to them. Later, Lily found me at the barn. "I hated him," she said. "Sometimes. I loved him too. Sometimes." She kicked dirt. "Does that make me bad?" "No." "How do you know?" I thought of Rose, Caleb, Clara, myself. Because people can love someone and still need to get away from them. Love isn't a verdict. She considered that. "Mama says you talk too much now." "Prison." "You blame prison for everything." "Very useful institution." She smiled, then asked, "Are you going to marry Mama?" I nearly dropped the currycomb. That transition was violent. "Are you?" "I don't know." "You say that when the truth frightens you." I stared. "Your mother has been spreading slander." Lily grinned and ran away. The truth did frighten me. By autumn, Clara and I had been living under the same roof for 5 months, though I still kept the bunkhouse room and sometimes slept there when nightmares were bad. We had kissed exactly 3 times. The first happened by accident in the pantry when we both reached for coffee and neither moved away. The second happened deliberately and frightened us enough that we spent the next day discussing fence posts. The third happened after an argument about whether I was overworking my left hand. I still do not understand that one. None of the kisses settled anything. I began to appreciate that. One evening in October, almost exactly 5 years after Clara first entered Red Bluff, Sheriff Benjamin Cole rode to Juniper Creek. He was the boot-toiling young Sheriff Amos distrusted. He had turned out competent, which annoyed Amos deeply. Cole carried a letter from Phoenix. "For Mrs. Whitmore," he said. Clara stiffened at the name. Cole saw it. "Miss Vale," he corrected. She took the envelope. Inside was notice that Gideon's estate had been settled. After debts and federal seizures, a portion of property legally belonging to Clara under her marriage settlement remained. Enough money to make Juniper Creek comfortable for years. Enough to expand Rose House. Enough to leave. Clara read the figure twice. "I don't want his money," she said. Margaret, visiting for supper, said, "It is not his. Read the paper. It was protected under father's settlement." It came through him. So did Lily, you keeping her. Clara stared at her sister. Margaret buttered bread. "I have always been gifted with tenderness." The money became a problem, because money always does when it pretends to solve things. Clara wanted to give most to Rose House. Daniel argued the ranch needed new wells. Margaret insisted Clara should keep enough for herself, because charity built on self-erasure was just another form of damage. Anna said nothing for 2 days, then asked Clara what she wanted if nobody else existed. Clara did not know. That question haunted her. One night she came to the porch where I was repairing a harness. "Do you know what you want?" she asked. "Currently, this buckle to stop insulting me." "Sela's." I set it down. "Some things." "The ranch." "Yes." "Rose House." "To keep helping." "Lily nearby." "If she wants." She watched me. Me. There it was. I could have dodged. I was tired of dodging. "Yes." Her breath changed. "In what way?" "I don't know every way." She almost smiled. "Coward." "Absolutely, but I know I want mornings with you. I want arguments about tools. I want to know when you lose your spectacles even though they're usually on your head. I want to be the person you tell when you're frightened if you want to tell someone." She looked away. "That sounds like marriage." "Could." "Are you asking?" I thought about it. "No." She turned back, surprised. "Why not?" "Because you asked what I want," I answered. "Asking you for something is different." Her eyes filled. "You really did learn slowly." "Painfully." She sat beside me. "I don't know if I want marriage." "All right. I may later." "All right. I may not." That one hurt. I let it hurt without making it her problem. "All right." She leaned her head against my shoulder. "I want the mornings too." So that was where we stayed. For a while. The money built 2 more rooms at Rose House, paid for a proper well at Juniper Creek, and funded a small legal aid account Amos managed with obsessive honesty. He kept receipts for everything. "Redemption by bookkeeping," I told him. "Mock me and I charge you for ink." Daniel and Esther had a daughter the next spring. They named her Thomasita after Thomas. Daniel cried when he told me and denied it immediately. "Dust," he said. "Inside the kitchen. Terrible dust." Lily became 13 and announced she wanted to study law. Everyone blamed Gideon. She blamed Sheriff Cole, who let her read old case files after school. Clara blamed me because I bought Lily a second-hand law dictionary. I accepted responsibility. One rainy evening, Rose House sent word that a woman and 2 children needed transport to the train station before dawn. Her husband had discovered where she was staying. I hitched the wagon. Clara came with me. The road was mud, one wheel stuck near the wash. We arrived soaked, tired, and late enough that the train whistle was already sounding in the distance. The woman sat in the back holding a sleeping boy and staring behind us every few seconds. I knew that glance. At the station, she froze. A man stood near the ticket window. Not her husband, just a stranger wearing a similar coat. She began shaking anyway. Clara took her hand. "You don't have to explain," she said. The woman nodded, crying silently. We got them onto the train. As it pulled away, the little boy woke and pressed his face to the glass. He waved. Clara waved back. Then she stood on the platform in the rain, long after the train disappeared. "What?" I asked. She looked at the empty tracks. "I used to think the day I left Gideon was the day my life began again." "Wasn't it?" "No, I think it began in pieces." "When?" "The sheriff's office, your terrible biscuits staying on Clover, Lily coming through that drainage ditch, telling the truth in court, saying no to Edwin, saying no to Gideon's letter. Buying half your ranch just to irritate you." "That worked." "Good." Rain ran down her face. "Maybe lives begin again many times." I looked at the tracks. "Hope so." She took my hand. We drove home in silence. The next morning, I found a pair of muddy shoes outside the kitchen door. Not Clara's. A young Apache woman stood inside with Margaret, speaking quietly. She had come from a settlement east of the mountains after losing her husband and brother in a winter sickness. She needed work, not refuge from violence, and had heard Juniper Creek sometimes hired seasonal help. Her name was Nayland. She looked at me cautiously. I looked at the shoes outside. For one dangerous moment, memory tried to turn her into Clara. I stopped it. People are not symbols sent to complete our lessons. "Coffee?" I asked. She nodded. "Work. If you have it. Fence line needs repair." She looked at my left hand. "You do it badly." Clara laughed from the pantry. "Everyone knows," I said. Nayland stayed through winter and left in spring with enough wages to join cousins farther west. Nothing dramatic happened. That mattered. Not every person who enters a life needs to become a crisis, a romance, or a test. Sometimes help is just wages and coffee, and a place where nobody asks for gratitude. Years passed without announcing themselves. Lily went to school in Prescott at 16. Daniel's daughter learned to ride Pearl, who had become ancient and mean. Anna moved into a smaller house near Daniel and pretended it was because the roof was better, not because she wanted to hear her granddaughter in the mornings. Amos regained eligibility for law enforcement and declined. "Too much paperwork," he said. Nobody believed him. Rose House became known far beyond Red Bluff. Clara hated that people called her its founder. "People helped," she would say. "Founders are just the first names reporters learn." On the 10th anniversary of the day she arrived, Mrs. Pike organized a dinner without Clara's permission. There were speeches. Clara despised speeches. I enjoyed that. When someone asked how Rose House began, Mrs. Pike pointed at me and said, "He kidnapped her from the sheriff." "That is not remotely accurate," I said. Amos raised his glass. "I was there close enough." Everyone laughed. Clara looked at me across the room. Older now, silver more visible in her hair, lines at her eyes deeper. Still counting my buttons when she knew I was nervous. After dinner, we walked home. The road was cold and clear. "You know," she said, "you never actually asked me." "Asked you what?" "To marry you." I nearly tripped. "We settled this years ago." "We settled that I didn't know." "Do you know now?" She kept walking. "Maybe." "That's cruel. You've survived worse." I stopped in the road. She walked 3 more steps before turning. "Clara Vale." She raised an eyebrow. "Yes, Silas Mercer." My heart pounded exactly as it had facing Gideon's men. "Ridiculous organ." I counted nothing. "Would you like to marry me?" She looked at me for so long that I began to regret every decision since birth. Then she said, "Not if it means changing anything important." Such as, my name, Rose House, my half of the ranch, my room when I need one, your bunkhouse when you need yours. Agreed. And no promises about forever. That surprised me. She came closer. I mean it, I won't promise what neither of us controls. I can promise today. I can promise to tell you when I want to leave a room instead of disappearing. I can promise not to make fear your responsibility. I can promise to try again after bad arguments. I swallowed. I can promise those too. Then yes. 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 I kissed her in the road. A horse cart came around the bend, and the driver shouted at us to move. It ruined the moment perfectly. We married 3 weeks later in the kitchen at Juniper Creek, because Clara refused a church full of spectators. Sheriff Cole performed the ceremony because territorial law allowed it, and because Amos said the irony was too good to waste. Lily stood beside Clara. Daniel beside me. Anna brought Thomas's pocket knife and placed it on the table for reasons she never explained. Margaret made biscuits. Mine would have been safer weapons. The ceremony took 7 minutes. I know because Lily timed it. When Cole asked whether I took Clara as my lawful wife, I said yes before he finished the sentence. Clara made him repeat her part because she wanted to hear exactly what she was agreeing to. That was the woman I married. After everyone left, we sat at the kitchen table. 17 knots on my side. 19 on hers. Do you feel different? I asked. No. Good. You. Terrified. Better. She took my hand. For years I thought the story of Clara Vale began when she asked a sheriff for help, and I interrupted with 4 foolish words. She's coming with me. That is how people in Red Bluff told it later. They liked the line. It made the story simple. A woman had nowhere to go. A cowboy stepped forward. The danger came. The cowboy fought. The woman was saved. But that was never what happened. Clara saved herself long before she met me. First in tiny disobediences no one applauded. Then by sending Lily away, stealing a ledger, stepping off a stage, walking 3 miles in ruined boots, and asking for help even though Gideon had taught her that needing anyone was a weakness he could punish. Thomas saved her. Anna saved her. Daniel, Amos, Margaret, Lily, Mrs. Pike, Marshal Ordega, even a telegraph operator who hated horses, all of them carried some peace. And Clara saved pieces of us in return. Not by being grateful. Not by making our losses meaningful. Thomas did not die so Rose House could exist. Rose did not die so I could become wiser. Benjamin did not die so Clara could become strong. The dead are not payment for the living. That took me longest to learn. Years later, when my left hand had stiffened enough that Lily, now a lawyer with an office in Prescott and still an unreliable artist, ordered me to stop fixing fence, I found the old carpet bag in the attic. Clara had kept it. Inside were 2 dresses, the little photograph of Lily making rabbit ears, the empty leather cover from Gideon's ledger, and the blue cloth Lily had hidden at Black Mesa. At the bottom lay a pair of boots, split at the seams. Mud still caught deep in the leather. I carried them downstairs. Clara sat on the porch reading a letter from Rose House. Her hair was almost entirely silver. You kept these, I said. She looked at the boots. For a long time she did not speak. I forgot I had. Throw them away. She considered, then shook her head. No. I waited for an explanation. None came. That was fine. We had learned not every object needed to become a lesson. I set the boots beside the door. A summer storm was building over the ridge. The wind smelled like dust and rain. Clara moved her chair closer to mine. You're counting clouds, she said. Only the dangerous ones. How many? I looked west. 1 dark bank over Black Mesa. 2 smaller columns above the pines. A thin silver edge where sunlight still broke through. I could have counted. Instead, I took her hand. "Enough," I said. She leaned against me. Somewhere down the road, a wagon approached Juniper Creek. We could hear the wheels before we saw who was coming. Clara looked toward the gate. So did I. Neither of us stood yet.